Bennington Board of Education. We're going to get started in a couple of minutes. I know I've seen some familiar faces and some not so familiar faces. If you would like to address the board this evening as part of our public forum, you need one of these gold sheets. They're located in the back of the room in a file. Please fill it out and give it to Jody McCoy up here in front. We will make sure you get taken care of during a public forum. If we don't have one of these sheets, we don't know you want to speak. So please, if you want to speak, we would love for you to. Please get one in the back of the room. We will start in about 1 minute.
Oh, yeah. Now, here's the thing.
All right, good evening. It is now 6 o'clock, so we are going to begin the meeting of June 12th Bennington Board of Education. I'd like to welcome all of our community members that are in attendance this evening. We're glad to see you here. I did make an announcement before the meeting started. If you'd like to speak at public forum, there are these gold colored sheets in the back of the room. Please grab one and deliver it up here to Jody McCoy at the desk, and we'll make sure that you get taken care of during public forum. The meeting this evening is governed by the Nebraska Open Meetings Laws, a copy of which is located on the south wall of the boardroom. And we are going to begin our meeting today with the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'd ask everyone to stand. The flags are located up here. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda this evening is our public forum, which is where we get to hear from our community members with feedback. Just wanted to point out a couple of items about our process and procedures for the public forum section of our meeting. You need to have a gold sheet. I've already said that. Under policy, we allow 5 minutes per patron to talk, and so please keep your time to 5 minutes. I want to respect everybody's time here today. We have business to get to as a board, and we want to hear from you as well, but we want to make sure we're respectful of everyone's time. What I'm going to do is when you hit the 1 minute left mark, I'm going to just interrupt you and say, hey, you've got 1 minute remaining. I'm not trying to be rude, but I want to make you aware of how much time you have left. And the other item is that there is no discussion of personnel items involving teachers or students. Those items need to be handled with the administration privately to protect privacy and others. So please be respectful of that. And with that, I would like to begin with Scott Searcy. If you
Yeah, sorry. And is that as far as the teacher's name specifically, or a teacher or a child
Correct.
in general?
Right, we're not talking about personnel issues involving teachers or students.
Perfect.
And if you'll just state your name, your address, and if you live within the Bennington School District. Just so we're all kind of get to know everybody.
Yep, my name is Scott Searcy. Address is 17403 Bondison. Like that.
That's what you put on the sheet, so you're good.
It is in Bennington, yeah. Sure.
Thank you.
Tonight you will vote on whether or not to make PRISM a school-sponsored club. I strongly urge you to weigh the gravity of that decision and the wishes of the community that you represent. My wife and I took 2 of our 3 kids out of this district last year because we were appalled at where things were headed. We knew that if we kept our kids in this district, they would continue to be exposed to highly inappropriate material approved by the previous administration. And now this board gets to decide if you want to allocate the tax dollars of this community to fund sexual conversations between adults and kids. Just as my parents did 30 years ago, I sit in front of this Bennington School Board to remind you that this is never the role of the school. I don't want to know a child's sexual preference. You shouldn't want to know a child's sexual preference. Teachers shouldn't want to know a child's sexual preference. And I'm concerned, as should you be, about an adult that wants to sponsor a club that focuses on children's sexual preference, not to mention wants to get paid to do it. The majority of the community you represent does not want this in our schools, and that is evidenced by the landslide in which the most conservative candidate dominated the last board election. It should be eye-opening as well that as new developments continue to pop up overnight in this community, that enrollment growth slowed last year for the first time in 2 decades. Many others like us pulled their kids, but sadly, myself and others like me are called bigots and homophobes for standing up for our children. I know the people closest to me know, and more importantly, God knows that I am neither of those things. All we want as parents is for the school to teach our kids reading, math, science, and English, and to stop facilitating conversations with kids about sex, sexual preference, and preferred pronouns. We will not support using our tax dollars to pay an adult to talk to minors about who they are attracted to. Your vote tonight will be public, and the consequences will echo in the future as you decide to stand either for our kids or with those who wish to sexualize them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your commentary. The next person up is Lisa Shaw. Again, name, address, and if you live within the district, please.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for all of your service to our community. I know it's a lot of work. My name is Lisa Schoenhoff. I live at 15719 Craig Avenue. First off, I want to let you know that I'm a mom to 4 children in the Bennington Public Schools. As a mom and a taxpayer, we not only have the right, but we also have the responsibility to know what's going on and know what's happening and to speak up for what is right in our schools. At the beginning of the school year, my son was playing a math game on his school-issued computer that we required him to keep on our main level for homework only. I walked behind him and noticed that a quiz popped up. The quiz said, "Are you gay? Take this quiz to find out." Now, this was on a school-issued laptop. I did reach out to the principal and I felt fine about resolving it. However, I will say that I think that content for my 11-year-old son is very confusing. A couple months later, my friend told me that her daughter checked out a book from the middle school library. She was concerned that this book referencing the main character losing her virginity in middle school and other inappropriate sexual content was also very confusing to her middle school daughter. Again, of course, I reached out to the principal and I felt like it had been resolved, and I appreciated that. But my greatest concern is that while I know from working with all of these amazing humans that there are very good, well-intentioned people, I'm also concerned that we are heading down a very slippery slope. Confusing children is not the business of education, and I think we all know that, and it goes without saying. But I will say this, I'm wondering if some of these federally funded organizations are pushing an agenda that is not healthy for kids, all kids, my kids, your kids, my students, everyone. I'm wondering how well researched this Prism Club is by all stakeholders. How many of our community members have done the necessary research to make a determination about the appropriateness of what goes on at these clubs? How many in this room have gone through the 50 states, 50 grants website to see what is actually in there? How many in this room have researched the GSA Club website? How many adults in this room have attended the Prism Club on more than one occasion? How many people in this room fully understand the qualifications of the person who is leading this club, and what is it that qualifies this person to direct these conversations with our children? How many in this room know where to access the agendas for this club, and how many of us actually knows what is happening? I think it's clear that right now there are concerns about things that we do not know a lot about. And so, as I feel this club may be a slippery slope for confusing children and actually causing higher rates of suicide, I'm not totally sure that I can say that it's all bad, because I really truly only know what I'm seeing on the websites, and that's it. So with that, I do know that I'm concerned that if one of my students was to go to school and socially transition without me knowing and not have any adults tell me, I would be really upset. I want to know what's happening with my kids, just like you probably want to know what's happening with your kids. And I think that is what I'm here for today, is just down the road, we make sure that we are very transparent, and that if you are going to speak up face to face, boldly, with the intent to hear opposing viewpoints. Do not hide behind your keyboard. Do not gossip with friends and coworkers, because that is just playing into the toxicity that is destroying our amazing community. Thank you.
All right, Marnie Hodges. Did I say that right? Hodges? Welcome in Bennington Blue, I see.
Good evening, Bennington Public School Board members. My name is Marnie Hodgen. My address is on the form that I filled out, and I am not in the Bennington School District. I first want to say thank you for serving Bennington Public Schools, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. The issue of whether the Prism Club should have school sponsorship is laid out in the Bennington School Policy 501. It states, the board supports the delivery of the education program and services to students free of discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, disability, religion, marital status, sexual orientation, or gender identity, and provides equal access to the Boy Scouts and other designated youth groups. My question is, does the district support other clubs using public funds? If the answer is yes, the district should support the Prism Club. If the answer is no, the district should not provide public funds. The policy gives a clear answer. However, I discovered there are Christian-based clubs at Bennington that are not receiving district funding. Were the sponsors of these Christian clubs not made aware they can petition for district funding? I'd like to encourage the Christian clubs to apply and get support from the district if they so choose. Moving forward, I urge the school district to be forthcoming and transparent with any club formed from this day forward, with clear instructions of when and how they can petition for funding so that no club is excluded. For clubs that are already being given district funds, this will be an unpopular idea, but as a fiscal conservative, I'm curious why clubs are receiving funding from taxpayer dollars in the first place. I understand and agree with the presence of clubs in schools, but I disagree with using our property taxes to fund them. When our schools were failing our students prior to COVID, with statewide proficiency scores below 50% in math and language arts and a state ACT average of 19 out of a possible 36, we have nothing to boast about. OPS has seen its student average English composite score drop almost 2.5 points from 15 to 12.64 in 6 years. So when area school districts like OPS are allocating property taxes to the tune of $265 million in 2021, yet we aren't seeing a positive outcome in our children's test scores, giving money to extracurricular clubs is money not well spent. Use our money for programs that will enhance literacy, as literacy is the foundation of education. The most pragmatic thing to do is to ask students of these groups to fundraise for their clubs. And what a great way to generate creativity, foster social skills, promote self-confidence and self-worth, encourage entrepreneurship and networking, while being a resume-building opportunity for our children. When I ran for State Board of Education last year, I focused on getting back to the basics of education, supporting our teachers, parental rights, and getting skilled leaders back in schools. I knocked 9,000 doors myself, and combined with my hardworking volunteers, we hit 14,000 homes in the span of 8 months. 14,000 opportunities for conversations with voters of all demographics, income ranges, and personal beliefs. The one issue that a majority of voters, including Democrats and independents, were in agreement on is that sensitive topics like gender ideology and sexuality education should not be part of school curriculum. When I knocked in Bennington, a majority of your community agreed with this sentiment. When looking more closely at PRISM and its 50 states, 50 grants, 500 voices, it states funds can be used to install a mural including all identities of the LGBTQ community, fund a Pride Week at school, and create gender-affirming closets to support youth. This is a backdoor approach to getting comprehensive sexuality education in the Bennington School District. I think it is extremely important for the voice of the community to be involved in how taxpayer money is spent, especially when it comes to our children and their education. I propose Bennington School Board retract their policy of using property taxes to support any and all extracurricular groups. It would be a viable solution and money can be allocated for legitimate educational purposes. I also propose Bennington School Board members to hold off on any permanent decisions regarding PRISM until questions brought forward tonight can be answered in great detail. There is no rush to make a decision. PRISM rightfully exists as a resource to the LGBTQ students and will remain. However, the decision to use taxpayer money should be made by the taxpayers, and is this something the community could put on could petition to put on their local ballot in 2024. Your community deserves to have more lengthy discussions about the concerns brought up tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marnie. Next up is Tracy Baker.
Hi, I'm hoping not to talk too fast. My dad told me last time I talked too fast. Tracy Baker, 7006, North 157, Bennington. I'm a Bennington parent. On the agenda is to discuss the funding of the PRISM Club with tax dollars. I have seen comments on social media. This club is needed as a safe space for a marginalized group. I would like to see the statistics within our district that this is a group more marginalized than, say, students that are overweight, students that are too skinny, students with learning difficulties, the list could go on. Rather than creating a safe space for one very small group, why don't we create a more inclusive anti-bullying club? A place where any child who has been bullied can come speak with their peers on the experience and gain support. If the club remains as I do not approve, if your club remains as is, I do not approve the use of my tax dollars to support it. As I've stated before, the district continuing to support an agenda, I will work very hard to ensure a bond never passes. If this was 20 years ago when it was a club and supported the gay community, I would be all for it. I voted for Initiative 416 back in 2000. However, with the ever-increasing list of what a person thinks they can be, meaning transgender, queer, and or questioning asexual and two-spirit identities, you are now entering dangerous waters. Why do I say that? Because if the district is affirming without parental knowledge, you are setting yourself up for a lawsuit. There have already been lawsuits in the states of Maine, Wyoming, and California in regards to this issue, and this was just a quick skim of a Google search. Another article stated there's a lawsuit from parents from at least 6 states over school districts not notifying parents of their child's name and or pronoun change. And these have all been filed just this year. Affirming children is not the answer, and schools should not be the place where affirmation is occurring. Recent studies show that 98% of children who struggle with their sex as a boy or girl come to accept their sex by adulthood. In just 7 years, there has been a 2,000% increase in children seeking treatment for sexual identity confusion in the UK. And you have to wonder why. Social media certainly is not helping. Social media helps to make it trendy to be transgender. Another study states that once a teen announces a transgender identity to their peer group, the number of friends who also become transgender identified was 3.5 per group. How do we not look at this and say this is not social contagion? I have many other questions and concerns with the club. Is a permission slip required to attend? What credentials does the sponsor have in helping kids with mental health issues? Because that's what we hear all the time. Transgender youth are at more risk for suicide, and I don't deny that fact. I have to assume if a student would state they are suicidal to a teacher, would parents be notified? Since a transgender youth is at higher risk of suicide, I would hopefully assume you would be notifying parents of their transgender status. I wish people here that are on the other side of the issue would understand this as well, and these are the words of a friend of mine who is a pediatrician in central Nebraska. It started with Obamacare. The 2010 Obamacare law mandated coverage of transgender procedures, which at the time affected 1 in 10,000 people. Now every major university hospital has a transgender clinic with amnio surgeries offered. Last year, Vanderbilt University exposed the field as a big moneymaker, and entire hospital systems can be supported by these surgeries as they require multiple follow-ups. That means that people are not cured by these surgeries. Instead, they become lifelong patients requiring more surgeries to fix the complications. Luring in young patients before they understand the adult consequences keeps the profit rolling, and dissenting doctors are threatened and silenced. Major medical associations depend on universities for membership and donations, so they decided they could live with defining gender-affirming care as telling a boy she can be a girl. In fact, 2018 American Academy of Pediatrics report for gender-affirming care, which is often quoted by court, judges, and policymakers, was actually written and approved by one man who was a gender care doctor. Planned Parenthood is selling false hormones and promoting gender ideology in schools through their C2C curriculum that was recently thwarted in Nebraska. In some states, Planned Parenthood clinics are moving into schools, overcoming the problem of patients too young to drive themselves across town for hormones and lifelong treatments. The younger the patient, the longer you profit. Drug companies are not complaining. The windfall of the medical industry is coming from your insurance premiums, and those treatments are mandated. Who would have foreseen that a 2010 change for a few disenfranchised would now be affecting kids down the street? And what happens to those that regret the decision? I have a picture here of Luca Hine, a woman from Nebraska, who was told she was a girl in the wrong body. She underwent a double mastectomy at the age of 16 at UNMC. What did affirmation do for her other than now being unable to breastfeed any future children she may have? Stop pushing the narrative in our schools. Stop hurting our children. Confusing kids is not compassionate. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Next up is Kathy Chauchet. I did see a few folks enter a few minutes late to the meeting. If you would like to speak in public forum, we just need one of these whole sheets that are located in the back of the room.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Fauché, 7948 North 152nd Avenue. During the last election cycle, I got to know Marnie, who's in the room tonight, and some others, and I myself probably knocked on 1,000 doors. My husband probably knocked on 500 doors. We'd rather be out on the weekends, vacationing, just spending time as a family. But like many parents in the room, this is important to us. These are our children. We talk to so many parents of all walks of life in Bennington, Millard, and Omaha. The number one issue we saw was people want lower property taxes. They want fiscal restraint. The other overwhelming issue that people agreed on, Democrats, Independents, and Republicans, was they do not want gender ideology in the school. This mirrors national polls, where people they want their deeply held personal and religious ideologies to be taught at home, not at public schools. That being said, I have a few questions for the board. Number one, is there a permission slip to join Prison Club and our parents notified? Number two, what if the family is not aware that their child is in this club? Someone else brought up the issue of lawsuits. What if somebody, their child decides to transition? I myself would lawyer up that day. Number 3, what is the school's process for monitoring the activities of the club? The GSA club at a high school in Iowa brought in a drag queen performance to the high school. When parents found out, they could not get answers from the school board about what had happened and whether the school had sanctioned it. Will the school be displaying pride flags and distributing LGBTQ topics to students and school staff? That is my understanding. That is a goal of the GSA, is to educate, not just invite people to join the club and maybe hang up a poster, but to actually put the ideology into the curriculum. The bottom line is, one more. What is the district process to distribute funds to a club? Is it a per student basis? How does the board determine how much the club receives and for what purpose? The bottom line is that teaching children about being transgender and comprehensive sexuality education, that is something that was brought up to the State Board of Education. It did not go through because of public sentiment. This is already a federally protected club. They have accesses to the same resources that other clubs have. There are lots of questions being brought up tonight, and we would like the board to hold off and provide answers to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Can the administration get back to her with the questions that she's addressed this evening? I think I've got them jotted down, but thank you. All right, next up is Mary Soka.
Allison, last time I spoke, you said I could give a copy of what I was saying as long as I was gonna read it. Is that still the case?
Yes, as long as it's written out of what your testimony is and not a handout. If you wanted to give a handout or an article, perfect, that's fine.
I have a little documentation. You can look at it and see whether you think it's okay. Oops, it's greedy. Oops, sorry.
So exact written testimony is permissible just for knowledge from the community. If you want to bring that the night of for us to read it. If you want to bring handouts, so I think the second packet, if we'll pass those down, this would qualify, I think, as a handout. Mary, is that okay? If I will pass those down to the administration. I think this is a handout as opposed to your written testimony. Those need to be,
Are you talking
Yeah.
about this?
yes.
You're gonna read that, right, or part of it?
No, I'm not gonna read it.
Okay,
I'm gonna read the one that starts out, my name is Mary.
thank you. So for the community, just so everybody knows, if you want to bring a handout, it needs to be in the administration's office the Wednesday before the meeting, just for the future. We'll give it to the administration now, and thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. All right, my name is Mary Soka. I live at 13919 North 132nd Street. I have a 10-year-old granddaughter at Bennington Elementary. And
Mrs. Soka, sorry to interrupt you, but I don't know if folks can hear. Would you mind scooting up to the mic just a little bit?
Okay,
Thank
if
you.
I start over, will that take up my time?
Nope, I'll start you over.
I'll just start where I left off. We lived in the district for over 40 years. I've spent many hours reading comments about the Prison Club and researching the 2 national organizations it is affiliated with. The name of the club, PRISM, Bennington High School Gender Sexuality Alliance, signals to me that this club should not be funded by taxpayer dollars. Gender Sexuality Alliance is also the name of the national club. Providing a safe place for students who identify as LGBTQ+ is not an issue. But from what I have read, it appears that this national club encourages and promotes the LGBTQ+ ideology. I'm just going to refer to it as LG because it takes so long. According to the national website, Gender Sexuality Alliance members are encouraged to get more members to local clubs through contests, putting displays in the school promoting LG, posting LG flyers in the classroom, passing out rainbow ribbons, putting LG books in the library, and attending activist training camps. This is straight from their website. Again, this is from the Gender Sexuality Alliance webpage, which the Bennington Club is affiliated with. That doesn't sound to me like this club is just a safe place for kids to go. Or is it a club that promotes an agenda? I don't believe any of this belongs in the school. The other national group Bennington Club members are introduced to is 50 states, 50 grants, and 5,000 voices. It appears that the Bennington Club may have applied for a grant from this organization. Some of the grants from last year included money to a school in Mission, Texas to create a regional queer youth conference, a Colorado school to remodel single-gender restrooms into gender-neutral ones, and a school in New Mexico for a gender-inclusive closet, providing affirming clothes for trans and gender non-conforming students, obviously to hide this from parents. I don't want to see things like this in Bennington. I'm wondering what our club's proposal was if they did offer one. The same site shows many videos of young people telling stories of their sexual preferences and which of the many LG terms they prefer. These videos are titled, "It Gets Better," and encourages teens to embrace various sexualities. If any of you have looked at the website, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I would encourage you to look at it. Teens can look at videos of gay, queer, lesbian, transgender, and other identification people describe how wonderful their life is as LG. Several comments I have seen say that Bennington Club is just a safe place for teens to go and talk. Since my research tells me otherwise, I definitely do not want my tax dollars supporting anything beyond a safe space in school. Maybe a safe space for all students who feel discriminated against. I do not believe it is the school's job to educate students about the sensitive subject of sexuality, even in a club, or to promote their ideas to the rest of the student body, which I believe the Bennington Club may be doing from the list of their activities from this past year. Teens who are questioning their sexuality need help from a professional therapist or psychologist who is trained in this field and will make kids think of the long-term consequences. I do not know the sponsor of this club, but I doubt that she probably has these qualifications. There are schools facing lawsuits over what is happening to students in these types of clubs. I am concerned that very sensitive topics are being discussed in ways that are not necessarily helpful to these impressionable young people. They are making decisions that will alter their lifestyles dramatically and in some cases irreversibly. Are they being educated as to the possible ramifications? Students struggling with identity are vulnerable and easily influenced. Maybe this club should be suspended until some questions are answered. Liability of the school and the school board is also a consideration if taxpayer money is used. A school in Florida is being sued because a student tried to commit suicide after being encouraged to become transgender. Colorado parents are suing because Gender Sexual Alliance Club, our club, recruited their children and introduced concepts of gender fluidity and other types of sexual attractions. A Maine mom is suing a school to help her daughter transition to non-binary. Parents in North Carolina are suing for the same reason. I was shocked at how many other cases there are. Are Bennington parents being informed that their child is involved with this club? These issues are the responsibility of the family, not an unqualified teacher. Does the school carry liability insurance in case that happens here? Again, do we need to suspend this club and make sure we are not opening a can of worms? Does anyone know what goes on at the club? What concerns me is their affiliation with the two national organizations and what these affiliated clubs may be expected to do. Before the board votes to spend taxpayer money on this club, the community needs to be informed and their opinions heard. Since taxpayer dollars are the issue, the board needs to vote the will of the majority. Why the rush? Can't we wait maybe until the new superintendent gets here, because he'll be the one that will be dealing with any repercussions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. All right, Stephen Bader, I hope I said that correctly. Mr. Bader, can you come forward? Welcome. Thank you
Howdy.
for coming.
Stephen Bader, 4902 North 134th Avenue in Hillsborough, just outside of things. I just wanted to come in here very briefly, really involved in campaigns, really involved in observing school boards all over the state. In fact, I'm actually with the state Republican Party, so I've been to a lot of different meetings around the state. And I have to tell you, I took it personally seeing the nasty incoming fire that Steve Shannon's been getting on Facebook. And that's why I came here to emphatically show support to Steve. Steve represents this community beyond politics. He deserves respect and he is fighting for his community's beliefs. If you take a look at the Bennington precincts, he got first place for the school board race, and the Bennington precincts voted 2-1 conservative at the legislative, congressional, gubernatorial level, as well as with regards to the bond. And so there's been a lot of people coming at him, basically saying that he's out of touch with the community, when, as I interpret the political science, there was a loud message from the Bennington community that they want to change course. And that's why there was actually a huge red wave in Bennington. And there could potentially be another one next year, as a heads up. But I'll end with this. As I was doing some research on GSA and PRISM, I found multiple articles that were both fascinating and shocking that talked about how GSA is rebranding to PRISM, specifically with the intention, there's all sorts of different quotes that I could pull from, to make it so that if parents wouldn't have approved a student going to GSA, PRISM sounds a lot nicer. Additionally, and I'll land with this, I did a little test. I logged on to the Bennington Guest Wi-Fi, and I just attempted to go to a site that actually talks about from GLSEN, GLSEN, which is a huge sponsor of GSA clubs. And interestingly enough, the Wi-Fi actually flags it, saying that it's inappropriate for children to view. Log into your Wi-Fi. So you guys might want to check the obscenity laws in regards to what exactly is going to go down with this club, because I was made aware that there's a fear of lawsuits. If literally Bennington Public Schools Wi-Fi blocks it, I just found that fascinating. But anyway, see the community stands with you, and I hope that you keep fighting the good fight. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Stephen, for your comments. Next up is Carol Dussel-Surrey. She is our last speaker this evening. I don't think there's anybody else. Did I miss somebody? That's okay.
This is important, one, but well.
At the last board meeting, I listened to staff talking about our new English and reading curriculum. And items that stood out to me, not saying it's not the best curriculum, just these items stood out to me. You had to be invited to participate, to be in that, to help with that. People couldn't volunteer. The opinions of all teachers in that area, we didn't check those out.
Sorry, can you go back and miss it? What were you saying in the beginning about the very first part?
Oh, when I was listening, these are just things that I noted as I was listening to the presentation. And like I said, it might be the best curriculum, but the process is what I was listening to. We didn't check with like teachers, what worked, what didn't. I heard evidence-based lots of times, but then it said we were going back to the basics of phonics and foundations of reading and stuff, and I wondered why we left that stuff in the first place. I heard many positive things, but no one mentioned any of the cons. And every time you purchase something, there's always good and bad. I didn't hear how we're gonna overcome the cons, just that this was the best one. We're spending $100,000 so parents can see their kids progress on tests 3 times a year. It took 2 years to make the decision. 25 people participated. Let's pretend they spent 10 hours per person per month. That's $300,000 in labor costs without benefits. And I went back quickly and I couldn't find the exact cost, but my memory says about $800,000 or $900,000 we're spending. What was most shocking to me was the board didn't even have to approve it. It could just happen. But yet they were have to approve $10 expense reimbursements to some employee for whatever it was. And it was a 2-year process, and maybe it needs to be a 2-year process, but I didn't get the impression that the board got updates along the way. 2 years is a long time to have people in the district spending on something without the board approving or knowing what's going on. The other thing I have talked a few times about money getting paid out of the nutrition services account. And I had some people in the district provide some more information to me, so I wanted to just talk about that briefly. There was I lost my place, sorry. It said, I was told that money, we did that because we had excess money that was in there. And so I got documentation and highlights from this email. There was a letter sent to the state in February of 22, referencing a January email, but I don't have that. The district was aware that the cash balance in that account exceeded the 3-month average food service expenditure limit. So we knew we were over the limit. It referenced the school year 2019 and 2020, that prices for lunches had increased in anticipation of opening 2 new schools. That's 3 years prior we were doing that. That they would use the $175,000 for new personnel and $500,000 in equipment for the 22-23 school year. Reasons for excess were an increase in student enrollment with very little increase in staff and increased federal reimbursement that was before COVID. It sounds to me like that was a planned thing, not, okay, we happen to have come along and got extra money. In a May 10th email, I was told that we budgeted for Stratford $439,000 and some change, and we spent $350,000 out of the building services fund, and we budgeted $484,000, and we spent $390 out of that fund. There were no individual invoices for that. I was just told, well, it was in the budget, and I don't know, I guess I don't see those budgets coming in exactly as they are, so I still wonder why there isn't support for that. In numbers from a previous review, I thought I saw 1.48 million coming out of there. So I guess that just worries me that we're spending money where it's not coming out of the building fund as a bond that the taxpayers approved. It's coming out of our nutrition services account. So thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you, Carol. All right, I think that concludes our public forum to this evening, unless there's someone else that would like to speak. Thank you to our community for providing us feedback. All right, the next item is our consent agenda, which involves approving our agenda, the minutes from the May 8th regular meeting, June bills, and personnel hiring and firing. Who had bill review this evening? Jeremy, is that you? Yes.
Kara and I.
Okay. Is there anything of note?
I did ask a couple questions, and just so you guys can all learn as I do, I asked about the line item of Amazon Capital Services, and that is for teachers and staff for supplies. I also asked about Cubbies. I assumed it was fuel, but it was confirmed that it is fuel for all the transportation in the district. So I just wanted to share what I learned.
Thank you. Anything else? We need the motion to approve.
Motion to approve the consent agenda items.
I'll second.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Carol. Jody, call the roll.
Allison?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Christie?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Motion passes. All right, next up are our administrative reports. Starting off with the elementary schools, Mrs. Vandalisti from Pine Creek. I already introduced you, but you can say your name, just so everybody knows who you are.
Hi, Allison Evangelisti, Principal Pine Creek. Our elementary report is short. It just highlights summer school, which we're starting the second week of. The theme is Blast Off to Learning. Roughly 230 students are being served by 30 teachers at 2 sites. We have a site at Harris Elementary and one at Interpoint. They're being ran by Alex Boxman and Andrew Meyer. Do you have any questions?
Are we, so are we full then for the summer school?
I
You're all
believe that they're
positions
at capacity for students that they have invited out of the As far as attendance though, up to this time, I don't know if everybody that agreed to come has come.
Okay. Fair enough, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, the middle school? Who's presenting this evening?
All right. Well, good evening. I'm Renee Rucker, the principal at Bennington Middle School. We just wanted to kind of summarize some of the things that we had going on at the end of the school year. The thing I want to highlight is all the student celebrations and our choir and band performances. We had a lot of kids involved at both middle schools. As far as our student celebrations, we had our 8th grade celebration at Halfdale Fun Park. Kids had a great time. We were very fortunate to have wonderful weather. We want to thank our PTO and all the families that supported us in this. Questions?
And just, that the 6th grade class coming in is huge. I was surprised by that.
It is. We are excited, and we had our 5th graders come and visit earlier in the month. I think we had it on our board report last time, but yeah, they're a big class. We're excited. They're excited. We're looking forward to Jumpstart in July.
I think just about close to 400, 380 some kids. So.
Yes, we are growing.
Thank you. Dr. Lamberty for the high school.
Good evening, Greg Lamberty, Bennington High School Principal. I think the highlight for us, we've completed graduation, and for the first time ever we held it outside of the stadium. The feedback that I received was generally positive. A few things that stuck out, that were pointed out, were still the lines. I don't know if we'll ever solve that. I don't know if we'll ever solve the parking, but in general, people enjoyed the ceremony, thought it was coordinated in a fashion that was efficient, highlighted the graduates, and got people in and out in a timely manner. So I would also point out, after we ended out 229 diplomas, we did have 2 other individuals of the class complete their graduation requirements the following week. So that's kind of always a tip of the cap to our assistant principals. Mr. Vogels, Mr. Kessel, as well as our counseling department for setting those kids up in a position to still earn that diploma. And the remaining 2 kids are currently enrolled in summer school and trying to work towards satisfying the requirements. Questions for me?
No questions, but just to thank you for allowing me to participate, and some of our other board members. That was really an honor, and just thank you for your willingness to shift and adjust and try to make something different work.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you all being guinea pigs with us. We learned a lot. Thank you.
Mrs. Fagan, your last student services report, is that correct?
Yes, it is. Not a super exciting one. We are still hiring, so I did update those positions that we have open. And then below that is, I just completed the IDA grant, so this coming school year, we will get $653,000 towards special ed funding. And then below that is the ESSER funds, so twice a year, we have to just report what ESSER funds were spent on. Once ESSER 3 is completely spent, we no longer have to do this report, but it was part of the American Rescue Plan. So if you have any questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Assessments. Thank you, Dr. Hoagie.
Absolutely. Dee Hovey, Assistant Superintendent. Hopefully to answer one of the questions on summer school and capacity, we in the elementary and middle school, we start with our students who are in reading plans and invite all of those students as an option. Then we take recommendations from classroom teachers of kids who might benefit from having this extra time in the classroom. So we start with that recommendation list and then begin meeting with parents during spring, February, parent-teacher conferences, and introduce the idea and share the availability of our program for parents. So that's how we start with that. Our goal staffing is 10 students per teacher per grade level is where we try to staff. So some rooms end up with more than 10 students. We schedule all of them at 10 students. And as we've gotten through the first week, we have a number of students who are dropping out. And so that has happened. So I would say we started at capacity for the number of staff we had, with the invitations we had. Are we at capacity today? Probably not. So the other piece that I'd like to highlight on my report is end of school year attendance. We monitor attendance each month. When we share that back out to our administrators, they work with individual families on trying to get kids to school. When kids are present in school, their success rate goes up, not only on tests, but earning credits so that our high schoolers can graduate. When you're at school, things are much more successful. So I give you a comparison of 21-22 compared to 22-23. Our enrollment has grown, and so I'm really pleased to be able to show that we're almost 50 kids down off our list of excessive absenteeism. So the students who are on this list are students who have been absent 18 days. We have 176 days of school. And so the state considers somebody excessively absent if they miss 10% of the days of school. So in our case, that's 17.6 days, we rounded off to 18. So everybody that's on this chart, the 251 students, all were absent 18 days or more. On the next set of charts, you'll see that we had approximately 6.5% of the students across our district who were in this group. And then we also have the students who are at 20% absent or more. It's a real concern to us because even though our numbers for attendance are improving, the number of kids that are missing 20% of their school days has gone up. We're finding more and more kids that are not in school that many days. Most of the time it's severe mental health issues. Kids are under a lot of stress, and unfortunately that's causing them not to be at school. So the work that the board has done to increase our family counseling, they have more hands on deck to help kids in all kinds of variety of ways. We're hopeful that that will transition and help these kids that are not in school right now. So we also offer services to parents and offer opportunities and information for them as well on how they can support their kids to be in school. So we are concerned with the number of kids that are over 20% absent. That's a lot of school to miss and a lot of knowledge that they're not getting that opportunity. Overall, our average daily attendance is very high. That's a good and it's a bad thing. Attendance gets counted when we get rated as individual schools. And you'll see only one of our buildings was below, or 2 buildings below 95% attendance. And so overall, that's great. Only 5% of the time the kids are not in school. The problem with that is when we're trying to improve that, which is one of the requirements, when we get scored as an outstanding, a great school, a good school, an excellent school, we have to improve that number. And we have to improve the number of kids that are not attending school. So we have to reduce our number of kids who are in excessive absenteeism, which is very hard when it's a very small pool, and kids who are in great need. So we're going to continue. The goal's still in sight. All of the administrators are working on it, but pleased to share how well attendance is going with those numbers. But to let you know, we still have goals and things to strive for. So what questions can I answer for you tonight?
Are the absences recorded excused or unexcused or total? Help me understand the data.
This is all absences unless it is a school activity that a student would be missing for. Doesn't matter if it's excused or unexcused according to the state rule.
Thank you.
So
And what happens to these 32 students, for instance? Are they failing that year and they repeat the year, or?
Not necessarily. Most of the students, we work with their families individually. At the elementary level, it may be that we're offering extra tutoring, we're offering extra supports for them. At the high school, we offer credit recovery. Saturday school is another opportunity that they can make up time. So we really try to accommodate students one-on-one where it's needed.
Do we as a district ever hold a kid back? Ever?
We do, typically it is, let me do this accurately. To retain a student anywhere until 12th grade is truly a parent recommendation. It's very rare when a school would recommend that a student be held back. It does happen on occasion. I would say this year we had 3 students out of our 4,000 that we recommended to hold back for that. Students, the way record keeping is done in the high school, students will continue to progress. So a 9th grader may not have really enough credits to be a 10th grader, but they do advance with that group of students so that they do get called a 10th grader. But during that time, we are working to catch them up on the credits they're missing. So.
And I just want to say, I appreciate the creativity you guys are going to try to get students in school. And I know that in prior board meeting, you discussed scheduling certain classes at the beginning of the day to attract certain student populations to attend. And so thank you for that and for everything you're doing to try to get them in school.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Good evening. Certainly, on behalf of the administration, want to thank the parents, the community, the students, and certainly the teachers and administrators that helped our children get through school again this year. I think what you're going to see in time with assessments, that Bennington Public Schools did very well. We are starting to make gains back from where we were pre-pandemic, and I think we'll continue to do so. So again, thanks to the community, thanks to the Board of Education, and certainly thanks to our students and staff for making what is a difficult year a very good year, both academically and activity-wise. We did get some information about funding. Remember, there are 3 different lids that go along. There was a lid that was added in terms of property tax or revenue. Bennington will be able to fit within those lids and still fund its public school in an appropriate manner. So we have the $5 levy, we have a budget overall levy, and we have property tax levy. We should maintain and fit within those. But certainly giving the new administration, as Dr. Claus comes in, the ability and authority to work with you as board members to set the budget for the 23-24 school year. And we do have some numbers. You know, we are growing and will continue to grow. We look to be somewhere around 4,300. That is K-12 as we move forward into the next school year. Is there any questions about the highlights that covered in Superintendent? Thank you.
Before we advance to the next topic, I don't know where the appropriate time to do this is, but it's your last meeting after 19 years, Dr. Hawk. So on behalf of the board, just wanted to take a minute or two to thank you for your service to the district and your final meeting here this evening. 19 years is a long time, so I won't be able to summarize everything that you have accomplished in your tenure and certainly won't do it justice. But on behalf of the board, I did want to highlight a few items as we celebrate your tremendous career here in Bennington. So during your tenure, Bennington expanded its facilities to 8 schools and multiple district-wide buildings to accommodate our amazing growth in student population. This included passing 5 separate bond issues. You certainly don't have student growth like we've had unless you're doing something right. And I can assure you that we're very proud of Bennington's history of academic success during your tenure. So thank you for your steadfast guidance in ensuring Bennington students receive the best possible education. It's very fitting in 2022, you were selected as the Nebraska State Superintendent of the Year, honored by your colleagues and those in education in Nebraska for your leadership. There are simply too many other accolades in 19 years for me to mention them all. So thank you for your service to our district, and thank you for ensuring that we are focused always on what is doing best for kids. So on behalf of the board, we have a small token of appreciation. I didn't want to disclose the fact that you like cookies, so we have a bunch of cookies in your office. So if you want to share, that's on you, but we appreciate your service, and thank you so much, and what a wonderful career you've had. Thank you. All right, I think that would conclude our administrative reports, and we will now move to our committee reports. I know the curriculum committee met, the policy committee did meet as well. We hope to have an update at our next meeting on the first set of revisions as we do our kind of periodic review of that. But do we want to start with the curriculum committee?
I think we can. Once again, this item will be covered as an agenda item as we move forward. So if the committee would like to have discussion now or during the agenda item, that's up to the committee.
I would say we for the agenda specific.
Okay.
I think we've historically tried to wait till the action item, if that's okay with all board members. Tim, Jeremy, you guys okay with that? Okay. I think then we move on to our lobbyist report then.
Excuse me.
Oh, sorry, I skipped over coordinator report, facilities, Mr. Edens.
Mr. Edens,
Thank you.
please approach the microphone. Mr. Edens, would you rather have the operations or the spreadsheet up first?
Operations. Good evening, Jeremy Edens, Coordinator of Operations and Transportation. So the first thing we have here is just our operations update. So the first thing I listed out was some big ticket items for our summer repairs. Concrete repairs district-wide. So I completed surveys, did markings, measurements, waiting on 2 bids from contractors. I have a local contractor and then another contractor I'm meeting tomorrow. They're gonna come out and give us some bids and recommendations. Here at Bennington Elementary, our district office, our second floor's got 3 windows that I think are from 1940, so we're gonna try and get those replaced. I got a bid from Pella for $1,251 per window to replace those 3 windows. And while Pella is out here this week, we're gonna walk the Bennington Elementary courtyard and take a look at those windows that are starting to need replaced. Pine Creek Playground, so I'm working with Mrs. Evangelisti on that. Adding some equipment, some mulch space, adding some fencing around that, and we are waiting on bids currently on that one. Heritage Elementary Outdoor Classroom, this is a PTO sponsored project. Have met with the contractor and the principal, and we marked out some areas for them to work in. Went over some safety rules, and we anticipate them to start sometime in July, and we are confident they'll finish that before the first day of school in August. Bennington High School activity entrance HVAC upgrade, so this will prevent our sprinkler system from freezing over the winter. So PLR recommended that we add a cabinet unit heater to this space to help with the cold temps. We also did an above ceiling spray foam. The cabinet unit heater finally arrived last week. It was ordered in January. So MMC is going to be installing sometime in the next few weeks. Once they're done, we will come through with our crew, do some drywall repairs, and add a ceiling grate to allow some heated air to get and prevent that from happening again. Grounds landscaping equipment purchases, so we did get our Xmark 60-inch mower in. The guys are using it at the high school, so we very much appreciate that. Our UTV, unfortunately, is delayed. We won't get that until June, but that is for Bennington South Middle School. Bennington High School training room remodel, so we're still waiting on bids. We have 2 contractors identified that believe they can complete the work before the school starts. And as always, all buildings in the summer, we use mulch beds. So we replace mulch with those plants as needed. I have an estimate there. That's based off of the last couple of years, plus the addition of 2 new schools. Paint touch up across the district, striping of all parking lots, area overseeing of athletic fields, and then work orders from staff. So our work orders from with the staff, when I first started here about 5 years ago, the number was around 400 and we had 3 less buildings. So we are at an all-time low for summer work orders. And that is kind of the goal, is I want my maintenance guys to be approachable by staff members and I'm not waiting until the end of the year to report problems. So I'm very happy to see that. We already have 43 of those work orders completed as of the date of the meeting. Summer cleaning, so full carpet extraction of all locations in the district office, interior, exterior glass cleaning, sanitizing high vesting gymnasiums, stripping and waxing VCT tile, buffing our terrazzo, deep cleaning our restrooms, and deep cleaning our kitchen floors. Any questions over that?
Just back on that spray, foam that we're putting in, how far in are we going into the school? Is it just in that one area?
It's just in that vestibule of the activity entrance along that exterior wall, just to prevent that north wind from putting through.
And then the unit that we're putting in is just for that area as well?
Correct.
And just to note, this is a summary of some of the information you just covered.
Correct. So just kind of a rough estimate, cost, how much we spent so far remaining, and some of my little personal checkbook that I try to keep track of, so we stay on track. So, some of those do not include window replacements, or the playground stuff around kids' floors, and then some of the other ones, like the 18,000 for secondary, I do have the auxiliary gym entrance calculated installation, including that price.
I know you mentioned the concretes. I know you mentioned the concrete is significantly worse than what you had anticipated. Do we have an underlying cause of that? It seemed like it was in, you said the North Middle School bus loop was one of the main areas.
So North Middle School bus loop and Heritage Elementary are both deteriorating much faster than some of the ones that are reported before them. I did have PLR walk the middle school and take a look at it. Hopefully they can give us some answers. But unfortunately, 2008 when we built Heritage. So,
To the Heritage?
Yeah.
12.
Sorry.
Thank you for checking the root cause of that.
Yes.
It was quicker than we were expecting, so.
This also covers, the unfinished business, this and the summer maintenance report repairs. So it has 2 agenda items in one for you to see.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lobbyist report this evening? Is Mrs. Clucker available or?
She is not.
Okay.
It's a long session. She is out.
Taking a
Before-
deserved break, I'm
Yes.
sure. Okay.
Before I go into the due payroll and the legislative wrap up, 2 unrelated items. Number one, we have a guest this evening, Tony Rainmaker. He is our new school resource officer. Tony, thank you very much. He will be with us. We were notified about 10 days ago that he will be with us for the next 2 years. Tony has extensive research in school resource officer. He actually helps train resource officers around the area and not just the area, nationally as well. So we feel very honored to have somebody as well trained and a part of our school district. Again, he is stationed at the high school, but you will see the school resource officer at every one of our schools throughout the school year. So welcome, Mr. Rainmaker.
Thank you. I appreciate you clarifying that. We all we sometimes hear from community members if there's a sheriff at an elementary school and it could be Mr. Rainmaker, so that's important for us to keep in mind.
And I should say Deputy Rainmaker, but, and pretty soon people will call me Terry instead of Dr. Hawk, so that's good too. So we have the general session. It's a 90-day session. It ended on the 88th day. It, as it says in this report, was known for the filibuster. And so there was a lot of information covered in the last 2 weeks. It was unusual because a lot of bills passed. It says there, over 300 individual bills, but it was within 27 bills. So the in-camera will show that 27 bills passed, but 300 were packaged within those 27. And it will be a lot of information that has been coming out in the last week. A lot of these bills will affect the Bennington Public Schools Board manual. There will be some mandatory changes in policy based on legislation that was passed. Some of these bills will not take effect for a year or two. For example, there was one that is much needed, and this is state support for retainment of teachers. This will come from the Nebraska Department of Education, as you can see on the second page top line. Second, fourth, and sixth-year teachers, $2,500 grant. Very little of that will be included in revenue for the school district. It will come from the Department of Ed, is my understanding, through information received today. And so there are other bills that will change student discipline, other bills that will change graduation requirements, and many things that you'll find in this report. There's an attachment that's out there for the public to see, but as you can see, a lot of it in that omnibus bill, Bill 703 or 707, that was included in that. Anywhere from option enrollment and the ability of students to take one class, homeschool the rest, and be a part of our activities, to school safety and school safety grants, to special education and special education funding, and the combination of special education and option enrollment together. Again, many different bills. Just received a lot of these, so this will come out in emails to the policy committee as we move forward. Don't mean to go fast through this, but this is again an attachment for everybody to see. There is the governor's plan for school aid. It really is made up of three parts. One is the foundation aid. Bennington Public Schools will not receive the foundation aid. That is $1,500 per student. That will go to those school districts that do not receive TIOSA or equalization aid. Bennington Public Schools receives about $19.5 million in TIOSA aid. Within that, there is an 80% anticipated change in special ed reimbursement. Right now, the district receives about 40%, so this will be a doubling, but we will not know the exact cost of the exact revenue coming to the school district until we finish the financial report for this year. The school district runs on a fiscal year of September 1 through August 31. So the financial reports are done in September and October for the previous year. You'll get equal payments starting in December, but you will have to figure out an estimate of what that revenue will be, because that will affect your budget moving forward. And we estimate this to be well over $1 million. Keep in mind that a penny on the levy can generate approximately $255,000. So this could be a reduction in the revenue, reduction in the levy as you move forward. But it will be up to the new administration and the board to see what that's going to be. The third piece of that was growth in revenue. We will have a cap. There are three parts to that. One is everybody gets 3%. Two, there are parts and pieces. A through B there tells you about that. And that is poverty, it is ELL students, it is growth. And Bennington fits into that I category, number one. 3% or more over 3 years allows the district to multiply that by 1 instead of 0.4 or 0.7. With that and without a majority vote of the board that could exceed that, another 5%, Bennington Public Schools will see about a $240,000 cap We will not be able to access that amount of money moving forward unless the board in July or August does a override up to 5% to recapture that. We have factored and calculated the budget at this point in time without that money. So that is a legislative wrap-up, and there are a lot of interim studies that we won't go into, but are part of the unicameral process as we move forward. Are there any questions to the lobbyist report and some of the bills that were mentioned in the summary wrap-up?
When you were talking about the kids that are homeschooled but are able to attend one class here per day, and then the rest at home, and then they can still be affiliated with sports or activities, anything.
That is correct.
That has definitely passed.
That has. Currently, it is 2 classes that a student can homeschool and be a member of the school with those 2 classes and participate in activities. And so this lowers that standard, if you will, from 2 to 1. And Bennington has students that do participate in particularly high school activities for that.
How many did you say?
I don't know the raw numbers, but we do have.
Okay, you said 8.
No,
Okay.
a student or a student or students.
Thank
you. Thank you for that report. Our next report is Mr. Kessel with the activities. This is our annual update on athletics and activities.
Well, we're going, what we have, Mr. Kessel, go ahead. Sorry. We have both middle school and high school. The report is out there for everybody to see. Mr. Kessel will go through to get to the high school slides, if you would, please. Make sure it works. There we go. But there's a lot of information there for the board and the community to see related to the middle school activities. If you have any questions, both activity directors are here related to the middle school activities, but it's information for the public to see. Mr. Kessel will cover the high school activities.
Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and get going. I'm excited to be here tonight and have an opportunity to speak with you about our activities programs and hopefully the value that we provide to the Benton Public School District and to the community. We certainly believe that, the things that we do in athletics and activities enhance the lives of our students and make Bennington High School worthwhile, a great place to be. So without further ado, we'll kind of jump right in and hopefully you'll find this information useful. Sorry, we like to include pictures, kids doing what they love. Participation rates, as we look at 21-22, we had a 65% participation rate at the high school with 947 students. You'll note here that we are growing, and so 1,013 students this year and a 68% participation rate. And so, for our money, when kids participate in school, they're more likely to be there. We looked at attendance numbers earlier. We do have attendance requirements for kids to participate in extracurriculars, and we do think that gets some kids in the door every day. As far as specific programs, you're welcome to take a look and dig in as you will. The parentheses or the parentheticals here are last year's numbers that we had tracked. The numbers on the left without the parentheses would be participation in those programs this year. And those are paid activities and clubs at the school that have paid sponsors. And as far as those paid sponsorships, those are paying to compensate those teachers and those club sponsors for their time. Some accomplishments this year, we feel I have many. I'll highlight a few. It's tough because, and I say all the time, if recognition is a competition, we'd be here all night because we could recognize our kids for a week. There's so much good stuff that happens at Bennington High School on a day-to-day basis with activities. But I'll highlight a few things that really stand out to me. We had 283 academic all-conference performers, that's the EMC, we're in the Eastern Midlands Conference. That would be juniors and seniors are eligible. They have to have a 3.5 or higher, so we had 283 of those students this year in our activities. Let's see, academic all-state performers, had 40 of those out of 46 possibilities. You can have 2 per sport, have to be 11th to 12th grade, and have to have 3.7 or higher. So let's see, 3 state championships, 5 state runner-ups this year. We had 10 teams that qualified for state championship competition. There are a few sports where you don't have to actually qualify. Everybody goes. Girls tennis would be a part of that, so that's not included in that 10 number. So we did have more teams that competed at state competitions, but we had 10 where you actively have to qualify as a team to compete. And we finished 4th in what the NSAA calls their All Activities Cup standings, essentially for qualifying for the state tournament, and then with each successive round of competition that you qualify for, you're awarded a certain number of points in boys and girls athletics, and a composite score is developed. And so that's what that represents. We had 8 district championships this year, which is pretty impressive. Last year, I believe it was 6. As we continue, 18 state speech qualifiers, that is an NSAA event as well. And 10 all-state choir and band members, 17 all-state first team honorees, and 6 individual state champions. Pictured there, we had our 3rd at Bennington High School, the 3rd 4-time state wrestling champion, Michaela Ritson this year, only 36 in the state ever. So that's pretty remarkable in my opinion. And among the largest unified bowling and unified track teams in the state, and we had for Bennington first. I believe, I could be wrong, I'm happy to be corrected if I'm incorrect, but first all-class, all-state captain of an all-state team in Iowa Ginde in boys soccer. Some current future topics, things that we're considering, and things that we think the board needs to be aware of. Costs have increased in all areas. I think we know that. We talk inflation, and it has affected athletics and activities. Whether it's equipment, uniforms, officials, maintenance services, game environment, what our events are like, all of those costs have gone up. And that comes as families, expect more of that high school experience. I think what all the board members experienced in high school sports and what I experienced and remember is a little different than going to a high school contest now. And it's just over time, there's just that gradual inertia to increase the game experience, to make it better for kids, and to make it more enjoyable for the families that come to games. And overall, I think that's a good thing, but it does increase costs. And it is sometimes tough to meet those expectations. With those increases in costs have come a change in admission rates. The Eastern Midlands Conference voted as a conference to increase our varsity admission prices for next year. So adults will be asked to pay $7 to enter those events as opposed to $6. Students will be asked to pay $5 instead of $5, and that's a conference vote. All the conference schools in the Eastern Midlands Conference voted to do so. I do propose changing our activity prices to align with other schools as well. When you look at our activity tickets, if you're unfamiliar, essentially you can buy passes that allow you to come into games not on an individual or all card basis. Our policy right now, or our practice, I guess I should say, we have adult tickets, we have student tickets, or student passes, and we have family passes. We are the only conference school that has a family pass. Other schools only have individual adult passes and student passes. As we look at revenue and funding, our goal is never to soak our families, certainly, but we do need to fund our programs. And so I think it's something to consider in terms of doing that moving forward, and having adult tickets and student tickets. That is a handbook item, I believe. And just as a general thing, as we talk about budgets and funding, the middle schools and the high school are funded with a lump sum from the district. We get a certain amount every year, and that can vary based on our funding. And then from the activity ticket sales, which I mentioned before, and then from gate receipts that we get from games. And so that's the thing, those are the funds that go to pay for officials, that go to pay for the various things that our programs need, uniforms, etc. Okay. Booster Club funding does supplement some funding needs for us, and I put those numbers in there since the 1st of January in 2022. Our voice programs have received essentially $17,300 worth of requests, and girls has been $20,000. And if a request from a coach or say strength and conditioning would benefit both boys and girls, I divide that by 2 in that calculation and split it between boys and girls. And so some examples of things that have been requested and approved by the Booster Club would be a new ball machine, baseball jackets, which I believe arrived just at the end of May, which was great timing. Weight room, racks and equipment in there, team backpacks for softball, a referee stand for volleyball, with some Bennington logos on it. Those are just some examples. Some miscellaneous program costs that I just found, I thought the board would find interesting. There have been some community concern related to how much we spend on some outside of the campus things. And so I thought I would provide some of this information. As part of our agreement with the city to use Priest Field, it is a $10,000 rental fee per year to do that. And then there is a tacit agreement to help as we can with facilities improvement at that facility over time. Boys and girls golf at Stone Creek and River Wilds golf courses, because Stone Creek will not have us there for tournaments. They say that it hinges on their business. And as a result, we go to River Wilds in Blair for our larger tournaments. But the cost there for the calendar year was about $8,900. Girls tennis, some know Genesis Health Club. We are also split between the courts up the road and Mount Michael. The total cost there was just over $9,100. Event workers in general, so our teachers that come and get paid extra duty rates of pay, we spent about $12,000 on those workers, and those are teachers that want to supplement their income a little bit. And we have some in this room that work a tremendous amount of events for us and are unsung heroes in a lot of ways, even though they're paid, because if they're not going to work our events, we can't run our events. They run our scorers tables. They are chain gang workers. They run the scoreboards. They really are unsung and really help us with that. So, but I thought that cost was interesting as well. And then field upkeep and maintenance. If you look at the calendar year for all fields, $58,000 to outside vendors. So there are significant costs related to it, and we appreciate the Bennington community support in trying to do that to provide for our athletes. And I think, as we move in and we talk about, well, I'll kind of keep going, I suppose, and I'll come back to it. But, track resurfacing, we look at facilities needs. That is ongoing. That process has been slower than I wish. That was in the last bond issue, and we believed it would be done last summer because of supply chain issues and what have you. They did not have the materials to do the work last year. We entered and kept our agreement with them for the same cost that we had gotten the bid for, probably 2021 in the fall now. But they are working on that now. Hopefully they will be done soon. The tennis program, again, facilities needs. It's split between 3 locations. That is a challenge for those coaches and for those athletes. Some future replacement needs: pole vault and high jump pits, shot put infill. That's anywhere between $30,000 and $40,000 for all of those things. Need to be done to help our track program. Sooner rather than later would be awesome if we could make that happen. Stadium sound system upgrade. I think particularly when we fill our stadium, it is hard to hear the PA if you've been there. It's very good at projecting out with the speakers we have and across toward the visitor grandstand. But if you're sitting down on the ends and the wings, particularly with our additions, it is hard to see or hard to hear. So I have pursued some bids that the district will evaluate and the board can evaluate it if that's something we would like to upgrade. As we talk about facilities, I think our vision and my vision of it is that we would be the best place to participate in activities in the state. And that requires commitment from the community, that requires commitment from the board and from the taxpayers. And I don't take that lightly, and we do appreciate it. But I think that's my vision. I think when families decide to come to school districts, a lot of times they make those decisions based on the facilities. And we got to understand, I think, and I hope we understand, that we are really in a facilities arms race with other schools. And I urge you strongly to keep up with those things and to take a look at what other high schools are doing, because again, that game event management environment piece, I think is really, it's expanding rapidly in ways that, again, it just wasn't when I was in school. And families expect more now from that high school experience. Obviously, growth is always on our minds. The potential split of the high school, in terms of the policies that the board chooses to adopt, the boundaries that they choose to, I guess, enforce, for lack of a better term, is a serious issue, I think, for our parents and families as we move forward. And I don't envy your position in making those decisions. Hopefully, I can be a resource with experience I've had in other districts and maybe some do's and don'ts of those policies as we look toward that. We look to move to Class A. The numbers are coming that way. Even if we decided to split the high schools, that would be something that's farther off than this. Our move to Class A is projected just based on numbers now, not really based on growth, just static numbers for 25-26. And the way the NSA calculates that is an 850 3-year enrollment. There have been some proposals to try to move that number up. Those proposals have not been successful thus far. Our current 9 through 11 enrollment numbers this year, we're looking at 812, and that's what we start the year at. The NSAA will look at those numbers in December and determine where we will be in terms of classification for the next year. So right now, that number, if we gain a net 38 students between now and December, we would be Class A, not in 25-26, but in 24-25. But right now, if we just look at the numbers we have, we would have, just moving the classes down, 847 9 through 11th graders in 2024-25, and in 25-26, we'd be well over that number at 919. In terms of just football scheduling, that's something the NSAA does in 2-year windows. That window will be determined in December 2023. So if we are below 425 boys at that time, we will be Class B for the next 2 years in football, regardless of what we would be in other sports. Some random miscellaneous things. EMC passes will be replaced with staff IDs in 23 and 24. I know oftentimes the board receives EMC passes. If you have a staff ID, that's how we'll work on that. So that may be something logistically we have to work out. But the conference has voted to do that as a nod of the cap to our secretaries that generally cut out, work through, and send all of those passes every year. I don't know exactly what our number is of total employees right now, but that is, it takes a little while for Ms. Zelfeld to do that. Coach retention, as you consider, what you're going to do with policy and those things, the best teaching environment is the best coaching environment. Most of our coaches are teachers and educators, and if they're having a great day in the classroom every day, that's going to be the thing that makes them want to coach too and want to stay in our district. So as you consider the best teaching environment, the best coaching environment, really it's making sure we have the best teaching environment every day. I do bring again, I mentioned this last year in my board report, the ability to play makeup varsity contests on Wednesdays. Just information for the board. In the EMC, Elkhorn High, Elkhorn North, Lincoln Standing Bear, Lincoln Northwest, and Waverly allow it in some capacity. Doesn't mean every time, but they do allow it in some capacity. Blair, Norris, Hastings, and Bennington does not at this time. To my knowledge, all Class A schools allow that. So that would be a change and potentially a challenge. As you look to expand programming and teams and opportunities for kids, there's still so many days in the week. So if there are games that are canceled for whatever reason, the ability to make up on Wednesday may be something to consider. And just from a personal note, as somebody that runs and has to help supervise events, Tuesday, the 16th of April in 2024, I would love that to be an early dismissal day. We do have our track meet that day, and it is an event that is too hard to run with our current parking situation. Families want to come and watch their athletes compete. Track meets, especially larger ones, generally start sometimes at 10 a.m., sometimes at 9 a.m. I don't feel like it start that early just because of our parking situation and challenges. And so that means you have to start at 12 p.m. or later. And this year, for me, that meant we needed to limit the number of entries we could have to make sure that families get on the road and are home at a decent time. Because track meets can last, if they get going and you have a lot of entries and you don't start early enough, they can last till 10, 11 o'clock. And you know, if you're South Sioux City coming to our track meet to compete, that's a really late night on a Tuesday night. So just something I would submit to the board to consider then. And then obviously some other pictures of some of our athletes this year. I'm available for questions if anybody has them. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that moves us to our next item before the board, which is our unfinished business. And the first item is to discuss, consider, and take action on our curriculum and personnel proposals. The process by which we'll do this is a motion first, discussion after the motion, and then a vote. Is there a motion with respect to the curriculum committee, and then we can discuss?
I move to accept the recommendations by the Curriculum and Americanism Committee and Administration for the 2023-24 curriculum and personnel modifications and additions as outlined in the June 1st, 2023 Curriculum and Americanism Committee report and pending 2023-24 budget approval.
I second.
Thank you, Christy and Kara. Does the committee want to provide us an update on what the recommendation is, just a little bit of the background, and then we can certainly discuss.
Would that be just, is that just?
Yeah, just the list. Want us to
Just give us a few highlights maybe, that would be helpful, I think, for those that weren't in the meeting, just to get the logic and kind of what the recommendation is.
So as we went through the curriculum meeting, we get proposals that are recommended by the administration. So we look at those, review those, read those proposals, and then make a decision. In the last meeting, we also decided to add a number of coaching positions. We read through those proposals, and the budget allowed us to add those. I know we worked with the administration. The administration also reached out to the activities director. And decided to add those to our, for this round of approvals.
I know historically you focused on trying to fill classroom teachers. That was the first priority earlier in the year for recruiting purposes. And now we're at the point where we have funds available to consider some of those extra positions. Is my understanding?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And I think this is our fourth or fifth round? Fifth round of approvals.
And these, the approvals are typically growth, needed for growth as we continue or needed for expansion of the program. And this all fits within the budget that we discussed earlier in the superintendent's report.
And just for discussion purposes as well, we did not close, or we're not going to close the curriculum proposals at this time either. We are going to leave it open for one more month, waiting for the new superintendent to come in as well. So they will remain open.
My apologies, Steve. And there are approximately 70 proposals, and we will give an answer to each one of those people, mainly staff members that created a proposal, whether it was approved, modified, or denied, and the rationale behind that. And that will occur at the last meeting.
Or held over sometimes. Make note of that, because sometimes there's proposals that aren't necessarily something that we need this year, and we hold some of those over, which we've looked at those too.
Is there any more discussion that would help with the vote this evening on a recommendation from the curriculum committee?
I have a discussion.
Let's hear it.
All right, well, I want to bring the people's attention to rules of order, which is file for policy number 204.9. There's a couple bullet points in there that I want to talk about before we get started. One of them is to ensure members of the board concentrating on the substantive issues at hand, have the necessary information to make a decision, and to ensure adequate discussion of decisions to be made, and to ensure meetings and actions of the board are conducted so as to be informative to the staff and public, to produce a clear record of actions taken and decisions made. And that continues to go on. So with that being said, on tonight's agenda, the Board of Education has been asked to consider to take action on sponsoring the Bennington High School's Genders and Sexuality Alliance Prison Club. When making this decision, the Board of Education must consider several factors. First, has the club met and continued to follow the procedures of the establishment and operation of the student organization? Does the club sponsor meet and adhere to the requirements on the club sponsor high school document? Does the club meet all applicable adopted Board of Education policies? And has the club provided sufficient evidence that it has met all other requirements set forth by the school district? I think we can all agree that every student deserves the same educational opportunities and resources as their peers and should be treated with dignity and respect. In fact, the mission of the Bennington Public Schools is to provide educational opportunities in a safe and caring environment that will prepare all students to meet the challenges of the future. I believe the schools best serve their community when they are transparent. As school leaders, we need to hear from parents who entrust the school to fulfill its responsibility to educate and protect their children and their care. Additionally, according to Board Policy 102.00, the educational philosophy of the district, the community may be given an integral part in the implementation and accomplishment of the objectives of the school. The community may demonstrate this responsibility to the school by expressing to the administration's beliefs and desires concerning the educational programs and practices of the school. And that's what took place earlier during our open forum. Community members, parents, and grandparents have asked me questions regarding what is being taught in the after-school prison club. And I have a few questions of my own. I don't know who might answer this, Dr. Rock, would that be you, or would we like the activities director based on the procedure?
Let us hear the question.
Right. So are parents involved in the process, or at the very least notified when the high school student chooses their class schedules?
I'm going to refer to Mr. Lamberty and Dr. Blumenkamp. Dr. Lamberty, Dr. Blumenkamp, former high school principal, Dr. Lamberty, current high school principal. And I believe the answer to that is there is parental.
Talking class schedules, correct?
Class schedules.
Class schedules are presented in a classroom to students, and they have the option within a 2-week time frame to go home and collaborate with their parents about the classes that they would like to enroll in for the next school year. Parents are informed by administration and counseling that those schedules have been presented. They should have a certain time frame to return the schedule. And then we do hold 2 registration nights, 4 hours on each night, where counselors and administrators are available to answer any and all questions students and or kids have about schedules or how they work together, what they should or shouldn't be taking, or questions about curriculum within those classes.
Thank you.
Yep.
What about the extracurricular activities such as sports?
Sure. So 2 times a year. One time in the spring, when we bring the incoming aid.
Do you want to get a mic? Just, I want to make sure folks on streaming can hear us.
Feel free to correct me if I'm.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the invitation. Twice per year, one time in the spring, we will bring over the incoming 8th graders. And we will just kind of walk them through what registration looks like, since that's kind of a new credits and these things fit together, and you've got to have so many for graduation. And then when that concludes, we do have an activity fair, where every activity, club, sponsored, non-sponsored, PRISM, varsity football, FCA, all have the ability and an invitation to be available to promote their club. And that is completely voluntary for parents. Students, they don't have to stick around at all. The majority of them do. And what our sponsors and coaches do is it's really just simply a collection of names. If you'd like more information, please put down your name and email. Parents have the ability to put their name down as well as a contact. Then we will do the same thing in the fall, more or less as a reminder. and options for maybe new families that weren't there in the spring that are now here in the fall. Pretty much duplicate that process of the first meeting is, hey, this is how the school day goes. Feel free to walk the building, see where your classes are. We have in the past had teachers available, kind of ran them through a mock schedule, 10 minutes, just say, I'm your teacher, this is what we're learning about, here's my syllabus. And then we have the activity fair again afterwards, just to try and let parents and kids reconnect.
Would this be considered the incoming freshman night?
New student night.
For the new students?
Yep, new student night.
I think the Prism Club specifically said incoming freshman maybe or something, but that makes sense.
Sure.
And then on the activity side, I would assume the student athletes still are required to do a physical or get a physical from the doctor?
Yes, that is an NSAA annual bylaw, so May 1 of each school year. So anything after May 1, 2023 is considered a valid physical for the 23-24 school year.
So with the physical, the twice a year and the activity night, it would be extremely difficult for a parent not to know that their student was participating in an activity.
Particularly for an athletic program. Our athletic trainer, along with Mr. Kessel and Mrs. Ethel, house every physical. And one of the steps at the beginning of your process for every athletic coach is to come in and check every kid on their roster for the NSAA district consent form, as well as for a valid physical. Casey does a fantastic job of maintaining a spreadsheet, tries to make it easier for our coaches, but ultimately kind of the exchange is, here's my roster, and then in return, the coach gets a report back that says, these kids cannot practice because they have not been medically cleared.
And you're saying that they're just taking incoming information, correct, or they actually perform the physicals?
We don't perform the physicals. We work with children's physicians. In the past, we worked with CHI to have some physical nights. What we found is that frequent communication, primarily in the months of late June, early July, and early August with families, grades 7 through 12, is very important because the majority of those families prefer to use their own primary family care physician. They usually have some sort of an insurance clause that after a certain date, there's a window, and our families are very good about responding to those emails and making sure forms get in. And then there's one other piece, obviously, if the kid's withheld from practice, that usually expedites that process quite a bit. And then if there are kids that are free and reduced lunch, we do have from time to time students that can't afford that because of medical or insurance challenges. We will reach out to our foundation, and they have always been supportive to try and find the proper resources or find medical care for those kids that want to compete in our programs.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I know we talked a little bit about the after-school clubs, but do specifically the after-school or even before-school clubs, we'll just call them extracurricular clubs, or non-curricular clubs. Is there any way to know, for a parent to know if their student attends a club?
Sure, great question. And Chris can jump in and answer this if the policy has changed. So this is my third year removed from that. We have a beginning of the year report. So part of the protocol for all clubs is after the first month or so by that the latest on my timeline was the end of first quarter. Each club, whether it was Prism, whether it was outdoor club, robotics, whatever it was, needed to submit a roster to me just simply for membership. Membership, planned activities, meeting times, because what we were battling at the time was if FBLA and outdoor club were having meetings on the same time and a kid wanted to be members in both, they're having to make tough choices. So we tried to set a schedule throughout the morning and after school where kids could attend as many things as they wanted to do. In terms of a permission slip, to my knowledge, we never required a permission slip for any of our participation in any of our clubs. Definitely something that we could implement. At one point in time, we were working and developing a coaches and sponsors handbook, which I believe is still a working document that Chris updates with the input of coaches. that might be something that's, that we need to look at as a district as we continue to grow, which would also be applicable to the multiple elementary schools, and to our middle schools. Here are some, procedures, if you will, of how to apply, maintain, track, communicate with parents, regardless of the club that's in place at the school.
Okay. So to be clear on the,
So, yeah, so, sorry, the last part I would add is the staff member in charge of a paid sponsor, should be maintaining a record of attendance. Because we would want to verify, we don't email the parents after every meeting, but if a parent were to email us, did my child attend football practice, Prism, robotics, we would want to be able to verify that for that parent.
You do have record on all of that.
Our sponsors should.
Okay, that's the question I guess he's
And
asking.
it's definitely,
so-
yeah, and it's definitely something moving forward, based on what I've heard tonight, and obviously questions and whatever club it is, something that we need to tighten a procedure on, but not just, definitely, I'll speak for my building at the high school.
Karen, you got anything?
well, that's Phil. So, but as far as actual approval, we have zero approval on that, but we do have parent involvement with curriculum choices and extracurricular activities such as sports, but just not clubs at this time.
You're talking in terms of
Parent notification.
other than what would be probably in a Badgergram, or, yeah, I mean, there wouldn't be an email that says, hey, your kid was at this meeting. Now, if the kid was at the meeting and they were planning a field trip, or they were planning a specific activity as part of a group like Leo Club. If Leo Club decided to do a service down at the open door mission, then a permission slip would be available for the kid at the meeting or at the event to take home to parents to say, hey, we have this planned activity as part of our club. Do you give your child permission to be part of it? What I would say, Mr. Shannon, is a planned activity outside of the school day or outside of our building would contain a permission slip for that child to participate in that would require parent permission.
So then even after school club, sorry.
No, but
Even after school
Right,
clubs
but the
are going to
child
require.
will be home because it's always after school or before school.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so, but what I'm getting at, an after-school activity, whether sponsored or non-sponsored, if that child is going to leave the building with that club on a field trip, then they still are required to get
A permission slip. Yes, a permission slip, anything that would be off campus.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why is that if it's an after-school club?
I suppose, would it be occurring, I'd have, the circumstances would probably determine some of that. I mean, sometimes the service time might be part of the school day, and we want to make sure a kid is in good standing. There aren't attendance issues. Might require transportation to an open door mission that's voluntary. I guess the difference to me is that that's a voluntary piece when they choose to participate in those activities. When you sign up for reserve soccer and there's a game on a Saturday morning, and that schedule's been published and then that's been part of, it wasn't necessarily, wasn't prior knowledge, maybe that's not the best way to say that, but there's a schedule of games for a reserve soccer team. Ideally, we have something that is scheduled with an activity or a possible participation event might pop up, or we have Bennington days, or somebody in the community reaches out, hey, we have this service opportunity over the holidays, would you like to do this? Oh, let's put this out there to the service club and see if they want to generate their hours.
Okay. So then in your mind, whether they're at school during the day or the after-school club or participating in an after-school activity such as sports or traveling somewhere, we still have the same duties and obligations to all students at all time that those students are in our care. And there's no differentiation as to what we can or cannot do with those students. Would you agree with that?
I would say,
Can you clarify that? I'm not following your question.
I would say the safety and security of our kids, the safety and security of our kids is a priority at all times. Our coaches, our sponsors, our teachers, a field trip that's not even really, Mrs. Guinan wants to take her kids to a fair. There is a process in place in which they have to apply for a field trip. It has to receive administrative approval from myself and or Mr. Kessel if it's an extracurricular. And we will always ask, what is the objective here? And how does this complement either A, your curriculum in your course, or B, the objectives of said club? And then the final piece of that, God bless Mr. Edens and Mr. Derry, is do we even have a bus or transportation available? Depending on the time of some of these things. Sometimes I can remember a foreign language fair where we were able to let kids go that were in good standing. They participated, they represented our school. They weren't able to stick around and never receive their rewards because we had to get the bus back to do routes. So those are always logistical pieces too that come into play.
Madam Chair, did you have a question?
Yeah, are there any other
No, I
questions?
was just adding to,
And
for those that have, I think the question is whether parents know. I know what clubs my kids are in because I communicate with them and I know if they have to be to school early or they're going to be late for coming home from school. So I think that's pretty typical for most parents.
Yeah, but I think you would agree that if the school district is taking these kids in, it would be our duty and obligation to make sure, just like if they go to a sporting event in a bus to a different location, they can't just get a ride home with their parents. They have to actually have somebody sign them out before that happens, or they ride the bus back to the school district, right? So I'm just asking simply if there's a procedure.
Sure. And I think one distinction I would make, sorry to interrupt your train of thought, is there are some distinctions between something like a prom or a homecoming. We don't have a permission slip that goes home for every homecoming dance for parents to sign and say, hey, it's okay if my kid comes to the school dance. We don't have a permission slip that says, hey, yep, it's okay for my kid to go to the road football game at Omaha Scud. We will have a permission slip during a state contest, basketball, softball, soccer or whatnot, is when it interrupts, or I don't want to say interrupts, when it conflicts with instructional time. That's when you'll see those permission slips come out. I think those are some pieces probably the way as well when you get into, where are we gonna require permission slips and where are we not?
And I should have asked you, maybe you might not know. So when I started, I talked about some of the things that are required for a club to meet before they can continue to either continue to go on or even be considered to be sponsored. I named procedures for the establishment and operation of a student organization. That still applies?
Sure, yeah. There is an application. I'm laughing because I have a young lady that'll be a senior. She has been very passionate about a lacrosse club, becoming part of Bennington. And my first question to her is, who is going to sponsor that? And that is typically the first question that I will ask as the building principal. That I used to ask is, do you have somebody on staff that's willing to sponsor your group? No. It's going to be really hard. The next step for me is always, what makes your group distinctive from an existing club? So one example that Dr. Blumenkamp and I used to always use, and somebody comes to us and says, well, we'd like to do a Young Republicans Club. Okay, well then naturally the next group is going to be Democratic Club. Would it be better to have young politicians? It's kind of how Outdoor Club was born. About 5 years ago, we had a group of students that were very passionate about hunting. And along with that comes fishing and camping, conservation. And so Mr. Schumacher very strategically wrote the beginning of the Outdoor Club. And it encompasses all of those items. And so he has been very wise, in my opinion, about casting a wide net instead of having 19 different clubs under Outdoor Club. We have commodities traders come in and talk to these folks. We have farmers, we have conservation officers, we have a variety of people come talk to the outdoor clubs throughout the course of the year.
Anyone else have any other commentary or discussion with respect to the vote this evening, which is essentially to fund the positions recommended by the curriculum committee? Just want to make sure everyone has a chance
Yeah,
to speak
absolutely.
and discuss.
I've got more, but yeah, go right
Yeah,
ahead.
I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to talk and voice their opinion.
And I thank you, Dr. Lee,
You're welcome.
for coming up and answering questions. I think I want to say first that I do hear the community's concerns and just as a point of clarification, wanted to share with you a little bit of the understanding and task that we have as the curriculum committee when we meet. And so kind of regarding the proposals, and I think you can see the proposals on the board, but our task is to determine approval for payment of a club sponsor or a coach or a program. And so specifically with regarding the clubs, since that was the main concern that was addressed this evening, so that is proposal number 55, 57, 59, and 60. So those are the diversity club, prison club, multicultural club, and outdoor clubs. Our task is to determine approval for payment of a club sponsor. The criteria set forth by procedures provide that upon completion of a 3-year probationary period, the club sponsor is entitled to payment based on the placement on the negotiated agreement extra duty schedule. These clubs that we have listed here have all met those prerequisites and therefore meet the requirements to have the sponsor position added to the extra duty schedule, allowing for the club sponsors to be paid for their time. So we are not approving the clubs themselves, we are approving the budget used to pay sponsors for the clubs. And just another point of clarification based on a comment, the budget item is not to support, so someone talked about fundraising. The budget item that we are recommending approval is for the sponsor, not for use by the club. So the clubs are still going to have to often raise funds for activities that they want to do and things like that. These things that we are talking about are for paying for the sponsor's time. And the only other thing I'll add is, as we talk about these kind of somewhat difficult things that can be hot topics, and I appreciate everybody's respect in how they approached their opinions and their comments. That is very appreciated. Appreciate Dr. Lambert's willingness, you've heard him say, to talk about how things are done in terms of if we need to tighten something up. But as public school board members, our code of ethics requires that we represent the entire school district rather than individual electors, patrons, or groups. And I want us to just keep in mind that call as we discuss these things.
And I just wanted to make a point too about just clubs in general. I think that these clubs present the opportunity of bringing students together who may share common interests in a positive environment. The clubs at our schools are held outside of school hours, as we talked about. They're generally directed by the students, but with the assistance and guidance of an adult sponsor. Schools all across our country have found that clubs of any kind can help students find acceptance, self-worth, and a place to lend support to each other. These clubs encourage leadership and foster one of our country's greatest attributes, and that's everyone's voice matters. These are safe, supportive environments that benefit a large number of students in our district, and I will continue to support clubs.
Thank you both, Committee. Appreciate all three of your feedback. Means ignore the two of you. I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to weigh in. This is the time to speak up and provide your feedback, that anything that would be relevant to the motion at hand, which is voting to approve the budgetary line item for the items listed on the screen.
So the question was asked earlier from one of the public, how does the board determine how much is paid out to the sponsor? I guess I really don't know that. So, because I can see all three are different numbers, if we can, or all four, I'm sorry.
There is typically the administration looks at the number of hours, the number of times that are met, and then makes that comparison with some of the other clubs and coaching that are on the extra duty schedule. So there is a recommendation by the sponsor themselves when they write the proposal and verified by administration as they move forward. So there are certain levels on the extra duty pay scale within the negotiated agreement that they will be placed.
Is that something you can show the public if they ask for that?
The negotiated agreement is a public document that they can see.
Has there ever been, because I'm just asking, has there ever been one that you pull out of there and vote on separately, but it's just always been voted together as a curriculum vote?
Been voted on as a group.
But I don't think there's any legal requirement that we do that. We could, or as a board, make a decision to stay or hold on specific items in that.
There would have to be a motion and a second and a majority approval to remove an item from the specific motion. You can step in that, incorrect.
There's already a motion and a second one.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions?
Marie, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Nope.
You covered?
I see a fear in her eyes turning back to me. So,
No, we've had some good discussions, which
yeah,
I appreciate very much.
and again, I'm learning, so I appreciate your time and education.
Yeah, and we'll
Yeah.
know too, that we
Right.
have these discussions in our curriculum meetings as well.
Or at least some of them, for sure, yeah. So you did bring up a good topic though, right? So one of the things you said is what makes your club distinctive? And I noticed that was in one of the guidelines and the requirements of the club. So I guess what really makes this Prism Club distinctive from the other clubs that are available? And really when I look at it, there's a lot of similarities, even a couple of the clubs that are listed up on the screen here. So what really sets or makes this club distinctive that it would need its own club and its own sponsorship?
Sure.
You know,
Anyway, can I jump in here? Because I feel like we are, again, losing sight of our task. Our task is to determine club sponsorship. Administration separately has already determined that these particular clubs, which have existed for 3 years,
Or longer,
some of them, they've already determined that they've met those other standards. We are determining whether or not we're paying the sponsors based on our practice that was outlined previously.
So I may be misunderstanding your position. So your position is that once it gets brought to the committee, if in fact that we do see duplication, it's the Board of Education's job to automatically approve a club that may be duplicative or may have not met all of the requirements set forth in the policies set by the School Board of Education. Your position is it just automatically?
No, I don't think we're a rubber stamp if that's what you're suggesting at all.
That's what I heard.
But
That's what I'm
I
asking.
feel that if you want to change how the procedure is done, then we need to have a motion and all of those things to change the procedure that's currently in existence. We can't do that arbitrarily now.
But I don't think I'm doing that. I think going back to the rules of order, I think to vote, and you can definitely vote however you want to vote, right? But I think we need all of the information before we can make that vote, or that educated vote, right? And if we deem through these questions that the club has not met those, or we are somehow being discriminative towards other clubs that have met those requirements, because I believe we are, then I think as a Board of Education, we owe it to the public to investigate that in an open meeting.
And has there been, my understanding was there had been discussion in the curriculum committee, and there was a recommendation, and that's why we're here today to discuss the motion on the floor.
It was recommended by 2 individuals on the
Correct.
committee.
Thank
not
you
by
for
me.
clarifying.
So,
Yep.
right.
So there was a
So I'm
majority.
here having an open discussion to talk about.
And I'm okay with that, I'm just trying to clarify, because I'm not entirely sure what the question is of the group. I think what Christy has relayed is that the administration has already vetted the club in the sense of said, is it unique, does it have a sponsor? all of those processes and procedures that are in place already have been done already. That's the operation piece. And the board's role is to approve the funding of specific line items. And that's what the motion is on the floor tonight.
Well,
I think there's just a
there's a
disagreement on that.
disagreement,
That's okay.
right. And as we go through this process, I think what we'll do is we'll find out one way or the other if it is. And if it has, it has, in my opinion. And of course, the rest of the board can do what they want.
Exactly.
But I think as far as an open discussion and based on our board policies, that we owe it to the community to do so. So I would like the question answered, if it's okay.
Yes, I have no issue with that.
So go on. The question on the floor was,
You got it,
what makes this club
makes it
not,
distinctive
yeah,
from the current, yep,
distinctive and not
okay.
duplicative, even to the ones that are on the.
So this
And Dr. Liberty, just to clarify, we've been going here for, I don't know, since 7:30-ish. So let's just,
I got
we have other business, I just want to make sure we have time to get
Straight from the PRISM end-of-year report, primary goals for PRISM. Educating on LGBTQ topics, promoting inclusivity and acceptance, promoting support and resources, empowering students for personal growth, creating a sense of community, maintaining a safe space for LGBTQ students and allies, being involved in school club activity events. Students who identify as LGBTQ usually find high school challenging due to stress, discrimination, bullying, or lack of acceptance from other students and or staff. PRISM in order to promote inclusivity and recognition of LGBTQ students, PRISM educates on LGBTQ historic and current topics. It creates community by allowing students to become involved and grow as a person. PRISM is a refuge for students to express themselves without fear or discrimination. Creating a positive school environment allows for honest, empowering, and validating discussion. These factors foster a culture of acceptance and inclusivity. The closest club we have, in my opinion, is the also proposed multicultural club. Their mission statement reads, dedicated to spreading awareness, understanding, and appreciation of a variety of culture, its people, diversity, and values. We also serve to support and unite members while promoting acceptance in the community. Our goals: we are a club designed to explore, celebrate, and educate members in the community about different cultures in order to foster appreciation and unity. As a group, we will strive for cultural appreciation as a means of connecting with a wide side of culture that may be lacking in representation or cultures in which members want to learn more about.
Thank you, Dr. Lambert.
You're welcome.
So from what I'm hearing then, is it just the LGBTQIA plus topics that are the distinctive or deciding factor to be its own club?
I think he just told you what the,
No, I know what this says, but what I've heard through
I think he's
this.
saying there's more than that.
Okay,
That's what he's trying to tell you.
Then I'll have to go through it, I appreciate that. So are there any clubs in the Bennington School District that are not inclusive or accepting?
Membership is open to any students in any club.
So they're all open, they're all accepting, all inclusive, okay, check. So providing support and resources, are there any clubs in the Bennington School District that do not provide support and resources?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Could you clarify that, Mr. Shannon? When you're talking about clubs, are you talking about people that are using our facility as usage, facility usage?
We can just think
Or
of
those clubs that are
sponsored,
sponsored and supported by the school district.
or may be sponsored, or in line to be sponsored, or have the potential to be sponsored, any club.
Yeah, because there are Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts that are considered clubs.
Okay.
And that we allow them to use our facility.
Outside clubs, not school clubs. So let's keep it as school clubs. Sure. Right? Because we're not overseeing outside clubs, right?
That would be correct.
Anything that would, how about we just, anything that would fall under the club sponsor high school, the educational philosophy of the school district, whatever other things that we had here, the procedures and establishment of the operation of the student organization and board of education policies. So we'll just keep any clubs within that. That's okay. All right. So empowering students for personal growth. Are there any clubs in the Bennington School District that do not empower students for personal growth?
Not to my knowledge.
Are there any clubs in the Bennington School District that do not create a sense of community?
Every club, every activity promotes community, activity, involvement, accountability.
Okay. Would there be any reason that any club would not maintain a safe space for LGBTQIA+ students and allies?
Any reason? So any
Are there any
reason?
clubs that would not?
Well, there are, the outdoor club, their mission isn't to it's not related to LGBTQ, that's not their purpose.
Sure, fair enough. But would they kick them out of the club if they wanted to go there?
No.
So, being involved in school activity and events, is there anything are there any reasons that would prevent any student that identifies in the LGBTQIA+ group from joining or being involved in any school club or activity event?
I'd have to double check the NSA bylaws on what the exact language is in terms of which genders can compete, but that would be the only one that comes to mind.
More specifically, like a transgender, maybe a boy that thinks they're a girl or identifies as a girl that wants to play in women's sports.
Again, I have to review or have deferred to Mr. Kessel on what the interpretations are of the NSA with those situations.
But other than the transgender single identification, there's no other reasons, right? Okay. So I want to change real quick. So when we look at clubs, right? So we have 3 Christian clubs in the Bennington School District. What has disqualified them from being sponsored?
What are you saying disqualified? To my knowledge,
Have they met all the?
Fellowship of Christian Athletes.
The two.
Well, I think I can answer for
Yeah.
Mr. Landry.
Well, when I say, let me rephrase. Have the Christian clubs all met the requirements to meet the sponsorship?
Are you referring to Fellowship of Christian Athletes and Campus Life?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And have they applied for club sponsorships?
It's a great question. Have they?
No.
They have not. Okay. And why is that?
That would be up to the individual clubs.
Okay.
I think the first thing is that they would need a sponsor that would be willing to bring it. Yeah. They have not. They would need a sponsor that would be willing to bring it. At this time, they have not.
What do you mean a sponsor that's willing to bring it?
Well, part of it is we're making assumptions. So at this point in time, we have not received any application. So it would be difficult for us to make assumptions as to why that is.
Fair enough.
And it is not listed on the group that are going to be approved this
Right.
evening.
No, but I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
we're
we
doing
talked
our
about
due
that.
diligence and find that. So I had a discussion. So during my discussion with the sponsor of both the middle school Christian-based clubs, I discovered that
That's where was that both FCA and Campus Life?
it's the two campus lives. So I met with the sponsor of the 2 campus lives at the 2 middle schools. During my discussion with them, that sponsor was not aware that the sponsorship program was offered to them. So my question is how is that possible, one? And why didn't somebody at the school district, when they met those requirements, approach them and let them know that it exists, that it's an option?
I don't know that they met the requirements, isn't that what we just said? That they don't have a sponsor, correct?
Well, they have a sponsor, it's Gina Lindsay.
Right, but the sponsor hasn't applied for funding, correct?
Because I just asked the question, the sponsor isn't aware that the program exists because
Yes,
nobody
and-
from the school district
Right.
has notified or told them. So how, Allison, would a sponsor be able to apply for sponsorship they don't know exists?
Right, and I think we're getting, go ahead.
Sorry, and this is a clarification question for me. Because those sponsors are not staff. So what is our procedure for doing club sponsorships for non-staff members?
Dr. Hawk, I think you addressed.
Yeah, the club sponsorship would be the same.
Okay,
Staff and non, I mean, on our extra duty list, we have those that are not certified teachers, but certified coaches. Most of the time, clubs are the teachers because it occurs right after school or right before school. The campus life and fellowship of Christian athletes do have facility use forms. They are welcome in our community, welcome in the school community, and have been in existence for several years.
correct. These two sponsors are new, however,
And such, you know.
so they may not know. I
It's the
understand
same for anybody that is. Nobody is approaching somebody to say that you can or cannot. These activities exist because they come and have conversations with administration and move forward in that regard. That's not to say that we wouldn't, but we have not been approached.
Sure. Wouldn't it be fair to say that a teacher would understand on their contract that there's an extra duty pay that they would be qualified for versus someone that's not working in the district?
I don't know that'd be fair to say because we have outside people that are not teachers that are head coaches. So I think it would be fair to say that a majority of the community knows that there's a negotiated agreement and knows that there are paid sponsorships for either coaching or clubs.
Okay. I can say as a board member, being on the board, I was unaware that any club after school or before was ever paid for or sponsored. And I'm a board member, so I would say that most of the people outside of the education world do not know that. So, okay, we'll just continue on. So.
Is there anybody else that has any other questions or just want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to?
Oh, yeah,
We'll
100%.
entertain,
Yeah, for sure.
Anybody else have anything that will be instrumental in helping the board come to a vote this evening on this particular motion? Tim, I know you're thinking down there, so chime in. I just want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to contribute.
Go ahead for now. That's fine.
I'll try and just cover a couple of additional things and maybe come back around. So my understanding, and I do appreciate that you're up here and you're taking the line of fire that you were not prepared to do. So I really appreciate you doing that. When we talk about approving activities, so under the PRISM Club's list of activities and things, one of the things that they talk about is they are a member of the Genders and Sexuality Alliance. They're affiliated with that and actually in their name, they're a part of that organization. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, I mean, they used to go by GSA.
Okay, so they used to
that
be known
comment
as that.
that was made earlier, I would say that is accurate. It used to be GSA, that was changed to PRISM.
Yeah, because it's more appealing or sounds better to the general public probably.
It was changed.
It was changed, right? Okay, fair enough. All right. So two things. So when I
Actually,
shared,
real quick, so I was there when it was GSA and it was it moved to PRISM, and that was with Mr. Porter, who was our sponsor at that time.
Okay.
And the reason he brought that to our attention, is he said PRISM has provided more opportunities and resources for our students to be able to, look at literature and just have a more inclusive opportunity within the banking community. And so GSA at that time was just Gay Straight Alliance. At that point in time, the LGBTQ community came with the PRISM Club and said, this could be more inclusive. And at that time, our membership came to us and said, this is the name we'd like to go with, and we agree with that. I agree with that.
okay.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you. Yeah, thank you so much. So, and this might go back to you as well. So when you click on the link that is provided from the PRISM Club, it takes you to a website, the Genders and Sexuality Alliance. Well, in there, it talks about the Gender and Sexualities Alliance network boasts about training youth leaders. One training in particular includes an activist camp, which are an intensive 3-day camp that provide deeper training on racial and gender justice, students' legal rights, gender identity activism, and curriculum inclusion advocacy, among other topics. So unless I missed something, when did the Bennington School District decide that we were going to promote national organizations and start training activists at our school?
I don't believe we can.
So then why would we promote?
Well, you're reading from a national website.
That is a part of this club.
That's on the head of this that we got into.
The activities would work through the administration.
Okay. So who at the administration has approved I believe it was in the document here that approves, we have to approve the affiliation with the national organization. Who was it that approved, and did they get permission to approve to be aligned with the Genders and Sexuality Alliance?
Again, how is this working for the motion to approve the pay?
Okay, better question. Let me change. How does the training of activists in the Bennington School District, or at least the access, how does that align with or how does that fall into the educational philosophy of the school district as required for the creation and ongoing club requirement?
The mission of Bennington Public Schools has been stated more than once this evening, and it's on letterhead and things like that. We're trying to provide an opportunity for students to learn and grow. There's a lot of research out there that says a safe, caring environment helps students achieve greatly. In fact, we had a presentation this evening that said just that. Those that are in activities have better attendance, feel better in a safe and caring environment when they come to school, and have better academics. So I think having the opportunity to belong to a club of any sort adds to the mission of Bennington Public Schools.
Okay. So how would you feel if a specific club or the ideology or belief of that system, not saying a specific teacher or a specific student in this district, however, if that ruined someone's family or caused to lead to irreparable harm to that family unit, is that a club that this school district thinks is supportive and inclusive?
You're making a fairly big leap in assumption there, that somebody belonging to this club is in danger or harm. Are you not?
Or someone in the school district, yes.
We attempt to provide a safe and caring environment for all students. So asking my personal beliefs of how I would feel,
I'm not asking your personal beliefs, I'm asking the school district.
But if you want to know that, I would feel very bad that we would do anything to harm any student, whether it's inclusivity or not.
I would agree with you. But if this continues, or this is leading to that type of issue, what are we gonna do if someone commits suicide because they're confused? Or in this case, again, not mentioning the specific teacher or teachers or the specific student that this has happened to, why would we continue those type of activities?
I'm not sure I have an answer for you. We have students in need in many areas, whether they're part of a club or not. And we try to take care of those students on a daily basis.
So I think, and I would hope, and I think our staff and our sponsors are trained that if there is a situation where a student is in danger, they're going to report that, and that is going to be addressed. That is, we are mandatory reporters, and if we have concerns for student safety, then we are going to report those concerns and call families. that is a requirement. So I think to me, and I don't know the situation you're alluding to without saying names, and I understand why you're not saying names and can respect that, but I think this question would have to be answered on an individual case and not be kind of thrown out in a public forum so that it could be properly addressed.
So what I've heard is that we have to be inclusive specifically for, what I'm hearing tonight, the consensus, right, of the board and the education. Because we have a number of clubs already that have met most, if not all, primary goals of the Prism Club, with the exception, and the only exception, of educating students on LGBTQIA+ topics. That's it. Everything else has already been duplicated over and over again by the clubs that we have in the school district. The only difference is that. That's the only difference. And so, why do we need a diversity club if this is going to do everything a diversity club does? Is it because it deals with race and race only? And then we're making those distinctions and having individual groups? That's really not inclusive to me. It'd be no different than what you discussed with the Republican and the Democrats. I can probably guess it's probably not a great environment, especially as an adult, those two in the room, right? But I agree with you. I think that's a great idea because I think we should have open conversations and have different viewpoints. So why, again, would we not merge these inclusive groups into one club?
Mr. Shannon, just my perspective here as a former principal. The Prism Club is not just lesbian and gay and queer students, it's straight students also. And what it does is it allows those two groups to meet and discuss and build bridges between those two groups on how do we educate one group versus another, how do we create unity and inclusion in our school, how do we introduce ourselves. In the multicultural club, it's similar, but it's done with culture and race. So we'll take a student that's African American that comes into the Bennington community. From my experience as a high school principal, working with those students, that's a scary thing. It's a scary thing for any new student, but it's really a scary thing for a student that walks in and doesn't see a lot of people that look like they look or look like they come from the neighborhood that they came from. So to create an organization and to have a group that helps provide support for that with kids that are not of color, to be able to build bridges and build some community and build some talking points. In my experience as a high school principal in 10 years was a good club. And in my experience, the Prism Club has done the same thing for our LGBTQ kids. So that's to me why they're different and why I believe both of them are of value at our high school. So, okay, thank you.
And I would just add, with all due respect to Mr. Hoppus, Mr. Applebeck, Mrs. Rucker, Diversity Club is at the middle school. And while I have middle school children, I do not have one that participates in Diversity Club. So, I mean, I'd be happy to cede my chair to them if you'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Sure, we're multicultural club in high school. So I guess, then who was it that, or let me rephrase. Did the Prism Club provide the school administration or the activities director, superintendent, whoever it was, or principal, the activities that were listed within the topics here, which would include things like the Pride Flag quiz, LGBTQI+ terminology quiz? Were those two activities submitted with all of the answers and the things that they've discussed to the activities director as required in the operation guideline for approval?
I'd have to cede this chair to Mr. Kessel.
I do not know the answer to that question.
Okay, so from what
I
you
would not
recall, from what you recall, you've never seen that?
I have never seen.
Okay. And so here's just a few of the things that are on that. So the LGBTQI+ terminology quiz has questions on there. A person with a gender expression, either male or female, but still identifies with a gender. Another question is a person who experiences sexual attraction. person who does not experience or lack sexual attraction. Women or non-binary people who experience attraction to other women or non-binary persons. A socially constructed system of classifications that ascribes masculinity and femininity to people. So if the club is participating in these types of activities and not submitting and following the recommendations and the guidelines set forth that they are to operate under to the proper authorities, they have failed to meet the requirements, and they should be reprimanded as it was listed in the sponsorship or the eligibility requirement to, I think it says something like, fails to meet the criteria outlined in number 1, and by notice of review will be served to the organization sponsor.
I don't think Mr. Kessel said they hadn't submitted it. He said he wasn't aware of that. Did I misunderstand?
He doesn't recall he's ever seen it. And he's got to be struck.
Understood.
Has anybody else, have you seen it?
Would it come to you in general in the process anyway?
Are we talking about pre-approval?
He's talking about pre-approval of an activity that was done at the club level.
All activities are supposed to go through the activities director, principal, or superintendent. And so has that club met that criteria and provided those 2 activities that I just listed, have they provided those 2 activities to you or the activities director?
Yeah, I can't accurately answer that question. I had so many of those conversations.
Would you have a record of it?
That was my next sentence, is I need to start making a record of every conversation I have with every coach and coaching sponsor. That'd be good practice for me.
Is there anybody else that has additional feedback that would be helpful for the vote that's before us tonight? I think we've gone almost an hour. And I want to make sure we're providing feedback that the board, this is supposed to be discussion with the board and what would be helpful for them to decide what their vote is.
Absolutely.
So, Tim, Jeremy, are there, been quiet over here, so do you have additional information that you need to make a vote? Otherwise, I'd like to go ahead and ask for the vote to be taken. Try to get as much time as possible, make sure everybody can ask the questions they would like, and as facilitator of the meeting, want to make sure we do that. But we also have other business to get to, so.
Yes.
Christy, Kara, I guess anybody that hasn't spoken, Tim, Jeremy, is there anybody else that wants to provide some feedback that you think would be relevant to the board for their vote?
Has there been any other clubs that have approached recently to try to create a new club of any kind, or is there concerns, or have you ever had concerns of other clubs? I guess since my mind's just rattling here. Clubs that will be concerning that we will run into the same issue that we're having tonight.
That's a great question.
And if not, then that's fine, I just don't have.
One club that was always on my radar, and I just mentioned it because trap shooting. And I don't mean that I'm not against it, it involves shotguns. And it is a safe practice, it is supervised, but that is one that has always been on my radar when I talk to other neighboring districts. Some school districts, I believe, I know they let our kids in that, and that's why I always made it to my desk. Because I could see that being perceived as you were now endorsing the use of firearms, and whatnot. That's not, that would be my intent. I do recall a conversation with a young man probably 2 years ago. I believe he graduated this year. It was the politicians, or it was a current issues type deal. He just said, hey, we want to get together and we want to talk about current issues, hot topics. I said, great, find a sponsor. We don't have anything that, we have clubs that are geared towards specific groups. We don't have anything that says, let's talk about the presidential election. Let's talk about on China or world global issues. We don't have those types of things. So those are the 2 that I can recall off the top of my head.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything else, Jeremy?
And then when it came to the trap shootings, that would be considered a club?
Again, if a staff member brought that proposal to us and was able to show that it had met the requirements, we would move it forward, just like we've moved every other club through the curriculum proposal process.
Or someone outside of the school district, just a sponsor in general, right?
Typically, it starts from within a staff member that is involved and has sponsored and recruited the kids, organized the schedule, organized the activities, conducted them in a sense. And
It's not essential, or at least it's not listed in one of the requirements that are established.
sure,
All right, so I just got a couple more, and I'll try and wrap it up. I think I've made my point. Jeopardy games, celebrating coming out day. Has that ever been submitted to you guys for approval as an activity?
the Jeopardy game, I was in that meeting for a short period of time. They were just starting that. I stepped out to take a phone call, so I don't recall the specific questions. The categories were across the top, and I don't exactly recall what they were because I took a phone call.
Sure, no, fair enough. But prior to that activity, it was not provided to the district for approval.
Pre-approved.
Okay. And that's a requirement.
Sure.
Creating inclusive posters for homecoming, was that something that was approved? Presented and approved?
All groups have to have administrative approval of their posters, whether that's something for homecoming, whether that's powder puff football, whether that's after prom, organizational meetings, FBLA. They have to have approval to put the posters up.
And that was done in this case?
I believe I approved some posters, yes.
Okay, thank you. And the 50 states, 50 grants, 5,000 voices grant application. Was that presented to either you or someone else?
I do remember having a conversation with Ms. Welker about that. I believe Mr. Kessel had a formal meeting with her, and possibly a few of the students involved, and they presented a plan. I don't want to misspeak, but I believe it was something to do with the counseling center.
Yeah, the pamphlets, resources in the counseling office for students related to those identities.
Okay, perfect, thank you. I think we talked about the other two. So there are at least a number, if not several, activities that this club has held and not followed the procedures set forth by the school district. Is that fair?
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable answering that and saying yes.
To the best of your knowledge.
I think we reviewed that there were some activities that were not pre-approved. We established that way, so.
So with that being said, I guess as to the board and the public and the people here, right? This club clearly has not met the guidelines set forth by the district and follow those guidelines as required in the documents that we have. So I don't feel comfortable moving that forward on our agenda. It should be on the agenda in the first place.
I guess you and I just don't see what we're doing in terms of the budget the same. To me, we're approving funding. And for you to pick one particular club to ask very specific questions, I'm not sure is fair in the sense that if we ask those questions about clubs that are previously been approved for sponsorship funding, outdoor club, if we went down the list, as an educator, time is limited, and I am not sure that anyone could meet those standards. And so I do understand the need for us to look at those standards and to have some more conversations, but to me, that's outside of the purview of what the motion is and what we're trying to do.
If you don't mind me chiming in on that, Christie, I think it's because we have a room full of public that spoke to us. I've received no less than 5 or 6 emails regarding this all day today. So it's a major issue. That's all I've received is this and emails telling me to not spend the district dollars on this. Nobody else has said anything else. I've never heard any positivity from the other side, other than from the administration and us board members discussing it. But I have had nobody email me, nobody call me, nobody come in front of the board tonight or anything. So it is quite concerning to me at this point.
I have received though, and I think there's been certainly
I hope they
Facebook
email me.
activity that has been different than what we heard tonight.
Okay, I have not heard that, just so you know, I have not.
And I have been contacted by both groups on both sides of this issue, and it has not been one-sided on the contact for me.
So I
Does
guess,
anybody
I'll try
else?
to say a final piece with that being
Thank you.
said. So,
Yeah,
so I guess I do take issue with it, because if we, in my opinion, have requirements set forth that are not met, and then we go ahead and just push them through based on an agenda, or based on personal beliefs, or thought process of how this club is going to interact, I think we need to look at this and say, look, oh, sorry. I won't start over if you want. But,
I just want to make
I
sure that
don't
they
feel
can hear me on that.
comfortable, and I don't feel it is appropriate, and maybe leading to potential discrimination, requiring other clubs to meet certain criteria that they met, then went through the process properly to be approved. So now we have now discovered that we do have a club that is on the agenda for approval that has not met the criteria that has been clearly set forth for them, or the requirements set forth. So I don't feel that it's appropriate, and by doing so, I feel we are discriminating, or potentially discriminating against other clubs. Either A, have not met those requirements and have been rejected for approval, or B, we're just saying that these laws or guide, what am I gonna say, policies or practices no longer matter.
Thank you, I appreciate your feedback. Karen, did you have anything else? Okay. All right, Jody, go ahead and call the roll, please.
Kara?
Yes.
Steve?
No.
Allison?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Tim?
No.
Christie?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is,
Discuss change orders. We have one before the board. This is a credit back to the school district. We have talked with the Building and Finance Committee about tile on 2 different buildings up at the stadium and the softball field. The general contractor, as well as the sub, will grant $73,387 back to the district as a credit for lack of detail and structure on the tile. The manufacturer is discontinued the tile. The other things that go along with it is it's not aesthetically a problem. There are some, if you look at a detail, if you happen to be a masonry, you would notice some of this, but most people will not. Administration makes the recommendation to accept this credit from Midwest DCM.
I move to approve all the items listed for construction, high school stadium softball field project, credits at $73,387.
thank you, Tim, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeremy. Is there discussion on this? This has been reviewed by the Building and Finance Committee, and we deem this to be good work by the administration in recovering a credit for work that was done. It was not acceptable, but perhaps aesthetic, and we're saving some school district dollars here, so I appreciate your efforts on that. Any other feedback or comments?
I will let the public know that I've been down there numerous times and been in the area of the projects and whatnot, and if you're not looking directly at it and really want to look at it, no, it's nothing visible, but it should have been better workmanship, and it wasn't, and we're getting paid back a pretty good job.
And the title's discontinued, so I don't know that it's an easy fix, that was mentioned, yeah. So to have different colored tile would probably look worse, so, this is a recommendation, I think, of the Building and Finance Committee as well, is that fair?
Yeah, correct, unanimous.
I guess Jody called the roll.
Christie?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes,
Jeremy?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
motion passes. Next item is discussion and consideration of summer maintenance and repair projects.
And we keep this on the agenda in case there's something that by policy needs a bid and more than one bid. We do not have this at this point in time. We hope to have that, and Building Finance Committee will meet prior to the next meeting to discuss what was talked about the training.
Okay. So I think the board can anticipate activity on the training room up to the high school and converting that, and we're looking at trying to find the lowest bidder.
That's correct.
All All right, next item is new business. Discuss the elementary, middle school, and high school handbook revisions.
And this is just a briefing, because there's no action taken tonight. The middle school, the elementary, middle school, and high school administration will be looking at board policy. Obviously, the policy committee needs to get a lot of that information before we give it back to the principals, so they can make the detailed work in the handbook. So you have current handbook 22-23 to review, and you have updates from each level, middle school, high school, and elementary, to see what the changes are made before approval at the July meeting.
Any questions on the handbook revisions? I anticipate quite a bit of activity here in the next month or so on this, so there's a lot of revisions that can be made, I think, legislative changes.
That's correct.
Are there any other questions for administration on that piece? Okay. All right, I think this brings us to the conclusion, which is the time and date of our next regular meeting, which is Monday, July 10th at 6 p.m. I would note to the community, this will be the first meeting for Dr. Blas, and he'll be on the job for 10 days. So we're hopefully going to give him a little bit of grace in running his first meeting. We're excited to welcome him to Bennington, and so we hope to see as many of you there as possible. I think we need a motion to adjourn.
Before we do that though, before you do that, I want to thank you guys, by the way, Dr. Lamberty, for taking the blunt of that. I really appreciate your participation and answering those questions. I was really trying to get to the bottom of it, so I really appreciate that. Thank you as well, Mr. Kessel. Dr. Bloomkamp, thank you. Appreciate that.
I think Jeremy made a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tim. Jody, call the roll.
Yes.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Ms. Grant, yes.
Christie? Yes. Kara?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Still yes.
The meeting is adjourned, and thank you all for hanging in there.